Chapter 794. Tangning from The Lost Relative. In the film, Tangning used her role as a policewoman to portray the helplessness of two opposing identities. Congratulations, Tangning. As the two presenters on stage congratulated her, the audience erupted in applause and cheers. Tangning was a little surprised to hear her name being mentioned so easily. She felt a little flattered. "Why are you still in a daze?" Mo Ting reminded her with a smile. "It's time to receive your award, my precious." Tangning turned around and hugged Mo Ting. At this moment, she felt like she was the moon surrounded by stars. Afterwards, Tangning stood up and headed towards the stage to receive her award. At this time, the bearded screenwriter continued. In reality, Hai Rui also sent her a few other films, including WH and The Forensic Concubine. I can say that Tangning's execution of both films was very good. She is a versatile best actress. Currently, she is filming a new film, Survivor. Apparently, it is another excellent film. I hope Tangning can continue to work hard and become an even better actress. I would like to share with everyone Tangning's results so far. The combined box office sales of her 3 films have already exceeded $6 billion. As for the results from overseas, she has already become a box office miracle. As for the drama, The Forensic Concubine that she starred in, it has already achieved the highest viewership rating in the history of television dramas. As for online views, it has already exceeded $20 billion. And this is just a little over a year after she changed careers. I'm sure a lot of people will never reach her level. But, it's undeniable that Tangning works harder than anyone else when she's an actress. At this time, Tangning was already standing on the stage beside the two presenters. At this moment, it was like the entire world was cheering for her. As the solemn music started playing and the heavy trophy was placed in Tangning's hands, she suddenly felt her eyes swell up. "Tangning, please give your acceptance speech," the presenter reminded with a smile. Tangning looked at the trophy in her hand and said to everyone in a choked voice, "To be honest, based on my past experience, I wasn't prepared to receive an award. I felt like it was too easy and didn't fit my image. But when I think back to every minute and second of filming, I suddenly feel that I'm very laughable, because I almost forgot about the hardships I had to endure while filming. As everyone knows, I went from being a model to becoming an actress. I'm sure many of you have witnessed the trials and tribulations that I went through. Today, I finally received this heavy trophy. What I want to do the most now is to go home and feed my 2 sons, as well as cook dinner for my husband. I want to share my excitement with the person I love the most. I would like to thank everyone. At the same time, I would also like to thank the Fei Tian Awards crew for giving me this award. This makes me realize that I am valuable to the film and television industry. Finally, I want to say to my husband, "You are my king." Mo Ting sat in the dark as he watched Tangning bathed in the bright light. This was the woman he was going to send to the altar, the wife he was going to spend the rest of his life with. As for Tangning's words, it made Mo Ting realize how much Tangning admired him. Afterwards, Tangning stepped off the stage and returned to Mo Ting's side. In front of so many people, the couple couldn't help but kiss. Wow! Oh God, look! It's so sweet, it's so sweet. I also want someone like this to spend the rest of my life with me. Afterwards, the Best Actor award was presented. But, in the eyes of the couple, the awards ceremony was already over. However, other surprises soon followed. The Forensic Concubine actually won the Best Screenwriter Award and the Most Popular Drama Award. Of course, when it came to Mo Ting's friendly performance, everyone was excited to talk about it. Everyone in the industry could tell that Mo Ting hid his abilities well. But, who had a way to make him return to acting? Apart from Tangning, no one. As for those that had previously questioned the couple's marriage in name, they no longer had anything to say. To use a line from a song, it was, "If this isn't love, then what's there to be sad about?" Soon, the awards ceremony ended and Tangning and Mo Ting left the venue. But, before they boarded their car, a group of reporters followed behind them. Due to Ting's imposing manner, the reporters did not dare to approach them. They simply followed them from afar. But, one female reporter approached Tangning and said, I have a diet that has been passed down for generations. If you consume it over a long period of time, it can help you improve your immune system. Tangning received the paper from the woman and smiled, Thank you, I will give it a try and let you know if it works. The woman did not expect Tangning to be so easy to talk to. So, she scratched her head in embarrassment and shook her head, It's my honor that you're willing to give it a try. We are all the same. After speaking, Tangning was escorted into the Rolls-Royce by Ting, leaving behind the female reporter. Perhaps, she would remain a reporter for the rest of her life. Tangning was definitely the best actress she had ever come across. In reality, the feeling that Tangning gave off was that she was willing to face the world with kindness. But, that was only if the world treated her with kindness in return. After boarding the car, Tangning couldn't help but sigh, Actually, the media isn't just annoying. There are also warm-hearted people. Ting glanced at her. Just as he was about to respond, the driver suddenly slammed on the brakes and stopped the car on the side of the road. Sorry, Mr. Mo. What happened? Someone fainted in front, the driver replied. Give them a call and send them to the hospital. Seeing the news of Tangning's award, Long Jia was happier than anyone else in the hospital. In the past, Tangning had been under her control for so many years and had always been stepped all over by Euro. But now, she was the beloved best actress. Stop looking at it, go to bed early, Lu Che reminded Long Jia. It won't be too late to congratulate her after she's done with her confinement. Sometimes, I really envy her. Long Jia put down her phone and lay down obediently. But, to her surprise, the next morning, the person sitting by her bedside wasn't Lu Che, but Mother Lu. Mom, why are you? Lie down, Mother Lu's eyes were filled with tears. Mother Lu's eyes turned red as she said to Long Jia, Xiao Man, I actually have something I want to talk to you about. Mom, what's the matter? Just tell me, Long Jia replied as she lay on her side. Even though she had a feeling that what Mother Lu was about to say was definitely going to hurt someone. You and Xiao Che should hurry up and have another child, okay? Have a son. I don't want anything else, I just want to have a grandson. Long Jia never imagined that Mother Lu, who came from such a prestigious family, would actually have a preference for boys. But, things weren't that simple. Chapter 795. As long as you give birth to another son for the Lu family from now on, I will no longer get involved with your relationship. Mother Lu's eyes turned red. Obviously, she wasn't feeling too good after saying something like this. Really, Xiao Man, Mom is begging you. No, Mom, this kind of thing. I know it's hard for you, but can you treat it as giving birth to another child for Xiao Che? Before Long Jia could ask for the reason, Lu Che pushed open the door. Seeing the two women's red eyes, he could guess something had happened. But, at the same time, before he could ask, Mother Lu gave Long Jia a look. Long Jia was a sensitive person, so she naturally understood what Mother Lu was trying to tell her not to tell Lu Che. Since you're here, I'll be leaving first. Mother Lu did not give Lu Che a chance to ask as she directly left the room. Afterwards, Lu Che looked at Long Jia, but she simply shook her head. Mom hasn't had a chance to say anything yet. Lu Che sighed and sat down beside Long Jia. From the first day we started dating, I told you not to care about my parents' attitude. After all, I was going to live with you for the rest of my life. But, now that our daughter has been born, you still can't change your habit of keeping everything in your heart. Am I really not needed by you? Long Jia lowered her head and thought for a moment. Finally, she lifted her head and said firmly to Lu Che, Mom begged me to give birth to another son for you. After hearing this, Lu Che didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but, why? Mom has never mentioned it to me before. Before I had a chance to ask, you came in. This time, Long Jia was telling the truth. Although I don't want to hold it against her, the way mom treats me makes me feel like a tool for giving birth. Plus, what's wrong with having a daughter? You're done with your postpartum confinement. We'll head home in a bit. Lu Che did not try to comfort Long Jia. Instead, he changed the subject. Mom and Dad will be home for lunch this afternoon. Long Jia didn't know what Lu Che wanted to do, so she felt a little worried. What are you planning? Just a family meal together, Lu Che replied casually. After speaking, he handed the phone to Long Jia. Weren't you anxious to congratulate the madam last night? Let's make a phone call and congratulate madam. Long Jia's attention was successfully diverted as she took the phone from Lu Che's hands. I almost forgot about this. Thinking back on the many years they had spent together, Long Jia was genuinely happy for Tang Ning's achievements. After all, when she was suppressed by Han Yufan, she never imagined Tang Ning would have this day. Lu Che watched as Long Jia dialed Tang Ning's number and let out a sigh of relief. Sometimes, as a son and a husband, they were destined to face difficulties when it came to family matters. But, he was already a father. If he didn't step out and make a statement, how would Long Jia and their daughter feel safe? News of Tang Ning winning the Best Actress award was currently trending online. As for her previous movie, it was rediscovered and returned to the top of all the major video streaming websites. This was the effect of a classic and a symbol of a legend. At this time, Tang Ning was about to rush back to the set of Survivor to confirm that Guo Guo had recovered. On top of that, on the way home from the awards ceremony, a woman was hit by the driver. To be exact, the woman had suddenly crossed the road. To make it easier for her to visit Guo Guo, Tang Ning asked the driver to take her straight to the military hospital for Tang Yichen to take care of. Originally, they wanted to call the woman's family, but they discovered that the woman did not have a phone on her and did not have anyone's contact details. So, they had no choice but to wait for the woman to wake up and ask her about her condition. Before Tang Ning left, she visited Guo Guo at the hospital. At this time, the woman had already woken up. But, she refused to say anything and refused to seek medical attention. So, as soon as she saw Tang Ning, she rolled out of bed and hugged onto Tang Ning's thigh. I know you are the most popular actress in Beijing. Can I beg you, please don't hand me over to them? Don't let the media find out about me. Tang Ning helped the woman up and over to the bed. You need family to take care of you. I don't need that, the woman immediately shook her head. It wasn't easy for me to escape. Why do you need to use the word escape when talking to family? Hearing Tang Ning's question, the woman fell silent and hesitated. But, from the look in her eyes, it wasn't hard to tell that she was treating Tang Ning as her last hope. It's because I have an extremely possessive brother. I don't want to be controlled by him anymore. Tang Ning, I beg of you, I don't want anyone to find me. As long as you can let me live in peace, I will do anything you want me to do. The reason why I crashed into the car last night was because I escaped from the awards ceremony. Is your brother someone in the industry? Tang Ning continued to ask. The woman remained silent for a few seconds before she nodded her head. Tang Ning also thought for a few seconds before she said to the woman, I cherish fate. Since you crashed into our car, I can consider your request. But, I have a bottom line in my heart that I hope you don't cross. Otherwise, I won't go easy on you. I'm about to head to the set and I'm lacking an assistant. If you can do some chores, you can come with me. The woman looked at Tang Ning in a daze and nodded her head gratefully. Thank you, I can do anything. What's your name? My name is Lin Qian, the woman replied. Your surname is Lin. Tang Ning said with a deeper meaning. She then said to Lin Qian, go wash yourself up and follow me to the set. I'll go right away. Tang Ning knew that Lin Qian had a story and it was likely to be a very interesting one. But, she wasn't in a rush to ask or dig into it. Instead, she gave Lin Qian some hope. The reason why she was willing to help Lin Qian was because she noticed that there were bruises on Lin Qian's body that looked like she had been beaten up. If she had really escaped, it must have had a lot to do with avoiding these flesh wounds. Although I've agreed to take you with me, you need to give me a resume. My husband won't allow an unknown person to follow me. Okay, thank you, Ning Jia. Lin Qian was calm as long as Tang Ning gave her a place to hide. From the look in her eyes, Tang Ning could tell that Lin Qian wasn't a calculative person. In fact, it was likely that she came from a wealthy background. Otherwise, how could a normal person be covered in luxury brands? The people in the industry. Yes, in this industry, there was no lack of dirty secrets. Meanwhile, Long Jia and Lu Che had just returned home. Chapter 796. Mother Lu and Father Lu prepared the best crib and baby products for their granddaughter. But, Long Jia could tell that Mother Lu didn't do it willingly. It was because she wanted a grandchild. The atmosphere in the house was a little tense, but Lu Che seemed to have seen through it. So, he said to Long Jia, "You fed late last night. Go inside and have a nap." Long Jia nodded her head. The good thing about Lu Che was that he always understood her difficulties. "What about our daughter? I'll coax her to sleep. She'll wake you up when she's hungry." Without any hesitation, Long Jia headed straight into the bedroom. Lu Che carried his daughter and tried to test Mother Lu. But, Mother Lu pretended nothing had happened and put on a perfect act. Lu Che did not expose her, he simply waited for lunch to arrive. Meanwhile, because Long Jia was protected by Lu Che, she was relatively relaxed. But, when it came time for lunch, the atmosphere at the dining table changed again. At that time, the baby was sleeping and the family of 4 sat at the dining table without a word. Long Jia looked left and right, feeling uneasy. At this time, Lu Che suddenly put down his bowl and chopsticks, lifted his head and asked Mother Lu, "Mom, I've thought about it when you spoke to Xiao Man this morning about wanting her to give birth to a son. I think a daughter is enough." Mama Lu's expression turned unusually ugly in that instant. "I don't know why you insist on Xiao Man giving birth to a son, but that is a matter between us. Although you are my mother, you can't interfere with my life. I've said this many times before, if you need anything, come to me. There's no need to make things difficult for Xiao Man every time. You know how much effort she's put in to make you like her." Mother Lu looked down at the bowl in front of her without a word. "Plus, she just gave birth. As an elder, haven't you thought about whether it's appropriate to tell her something like this at a time like this? She is my wife. I married her because I love her. You are also a woman. Why must you make things difficult for your daughter-in-law?" Mother Lu did not respond. She simply put down her chopsticks and stood up to leave. Father Lu was confused, but Lu Che remained calm. Long Jia tugged at his sleeve, feeling a little uneasy. "Your words are too harsh. Don't worry, leave it to me." "Why? What else could it be?" Mama Lu suddenly returned to the dining table, her expression utterly furious. The Lu family no longer despises her birth and accepted her as a daughter-in-law. Is it really that hard to have her give birth to another child? I just mentioned it to her this morning, and she immediately complained to her husband. "Long man, you're really something." That's what I found out. She wasn't prepared to tell me at all. Besides, we're husband and wife. If she wants to have a son, doesn't she need to tell me first? Lu Che's voice was a few times louder than before. "I don't understand. What era are we in? Why do you have to place so many restrictions and demands on your own family? It's not like we're living a shitty life. Xiao Man also relies on her own hands to support herself. How is she worse than you? Where did your sectarian bias come from? How great are you? Alright, let's not talk about it anymore. In any case, without a grandson, there's no need to talk about anything else." Seeing that Mother Lu didn't want to continue the conversation, Lu Che added, "You don't respect my wife. Even if I have a son in the future, I will tell him the truth about how his grandmother treated his mother. You, Mom, a person should have a bottom line. I think you've grown up and have completely forgotten about your parents. Mother Lu burst into tears. Don't try to use this to threaten me. You know I hate it and won't be threatened like this. Lu Che protected Long Jia tightly. He knew, in this world, apart from her only family, he was the only one she could rely on. There were some things that a man had to do. Fine, I'll pretend I never had a son like you. After speaking, Mother Lu left the house and Father Lu quickly chased after her. The dining room suddenly fell silent. Meanwhile, Long Jia leaned against Lu Che's shoulder and asked, "Why did you do this?" "I need to protect you and our family." No one wanted to do this, but they always had to make a choice. Long Jia was moved as she sighed, "Thank you for giving me the best sense of security during my most vulnerable time. This is what a husband and father should do." No matter what the reason was, it didn't make sense for Mother Lu to want a grandson. She could give advice, but she couldn't treat Long Jia like a tool. After all, she was also a woman. Mom doesn't like me. Is it because I'm in the entertainment industry? Does she think I'm dirty too? No, don't think too much about it, Lu Che replied. Or does she think I'm not capable? I know better than anyone whether you are capable or not. Xiao Man, no matter what you want to do, go ahead and do it. Lu Che couldn't deny that when it came to relationships, Mo Ting had set a good example for him and he had some correct values. After all, he had never felt that women were weaker than men. Tang Ning was the best example of that. It was at this moment that Long Jia swore to herself that she could no longer rely on Lu Che to give her a sense of security like before. She needed to build her own confidence and give herself a sense of security. As for Mother Lu, she was prepared. As long as Mother Lu was willing, she would continue to be as filial as a daughter. But, if Mother Lu insisted on causing trouble for her, she would no longer avoid it. She couldn't let Lu Che face problems on his own. So, she had a plan in mind. However, this plan would have to wait until her daughter was a little older. After Mo Ting received Lin Qian's resume, he instructed Fang Yu to investigate her background. In the end, he discovered that Lin Qian's background was completely clean. President, Lin Qian graduated from a prestigious overseas school. Being an assistant is a huge injustice for her. Is there anything else you want to say? Mo Ting didn't care which school Lin Qian graduated from. Interestingly, Lin Qian is the younger sister of Quan Zai, the heavenly king who returned to China for the Fei Tian Awards. Of course, she is merely an adopted daughter of the Quan family. But, from the looks of it, the relationship between the two siblings isn't simple. Fang Yu raised an eyebrow at Mo Ting. This is a hot potato. I can't believe Tang Ning accepted it. Quan Zai, so what? Mo Ting asked without lifting his head. The young master of the devilish charm, although I don't know why he left the industry, he is a charming man that can be compared to you. Chapter 797. Tang Ning returned to the set of Survivor with Lin Qian. To congratulate her on winning the Fei Tian Best Actress Award, the crew prepared a celebration party and a huge cake for her. This way, Survivor could be promoted from Tang Ning to Best Actress Tang Ning. Tang Ning, you still have a long way to go. Although you've won a Fei Tian Award, if you want to completely conquer the hearts of the people, you still need work and time. This industry is all about fame and fortune. There are too many bad people out there. It's hard to be yourself forever. Tang Ning did not say a word as she continued to eat and drink with the crew. Finally, the director noticed Lin Qian's presence. This child is my new assistant, Tang Ning replied. I hope you can take care of her. You've been missing an assistant for a long time, the director said as he stood up from his seat. With that, the director stood up from his seat. I'm old and can't play anymore. It's better for you young people to play. Oh right, there will be new actors joining the cast tomorrow. The first scene will be your scene together. You remember, right? Tang Ning smiled and nodded her head. Get some rest. Because of her award, Tang Ning's status in the crew slowly rose. Now, everyone on set had to address her respectfully as Ning Jie. Of course, this respect came from the bottom of their hearts. I don't need you to do most of the things, but there are some things that are a bit difficult for me to do myself, Tang Ning said. I understand, Lin Qian nodded. Although Tang Ning didn't like to put on airs, there were a lot of things that required an assistant to handle in advance. That way, she could save a lot of time. I've asked the staff to arrange a room for you. It's right next to mine. I have a scene tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Remember to wake up. After giving her instructions, Tang Ning turned and opened the door to her room. At this time, a woman suddenly ran through the corridor and almost bumped into Tang Ning. Sorry Ning Jie. I was too excited to see you, so I couldn't control myself and acted on impulse. I hope you don't mind. I am a new actress on set, Su Xian. The woman was relatively skinny and looked like she hadn't had a good meal. But, she had a warm smile and didn't look annoying at first glance. Rest early. Tang Ning shook the woman's hand and returned to her room, followed by Lin Qian. Su Xian stood in front of Tang Ning's room excitedly for quite some time before she reluctantly went to find her own room. The next morning, Tang Ning and Lin Qian were the first to arrive on set. After the makeup was done, Lin Qian almost didn't recognize Tang Ning. After all, Tang Ning had abandoned her glamorous identity from yesterday and turned into the old, ugly and crazy woman from Survivor. Meanwhile, Su Xian's role was to search for her sister, who had died in a plane crash. Seeing the mess on Tang Ning's body, Su Xian couldn't take it anymore. Before the shoot started, she approached Tang Ning and said, Ning Jie, you've sacrificed a lot. Don't you feel bad seeing your hair sticking to your face? I said, Jie said, I said. I've always heard that your acting is very good, but I've only seen it in movies. Today, I can finally see your real acting skills. I'm really excited. Tang Ning gestured to Lin Qian, hoping that she would stop bothering her while she was reading her script. However, Lin Qian just kept on talking. It wasn't easy for Tang Ning to finally start filming, but she managed to complete it on the first try. Even when she was up against the much weaker Su Xian, she didn't make any mistakes. Great Tang Ning, keep it up. After the scene was over, Tang Ning wanted to leave, but Su Xian held on to her. Ning Jie, can you teach me how to act? I really want to be like you. Seeing this, Lin Qian immediately approached Su Xian and said, Miss Su, Ning Jie needs to prepare for the next match. In that case, I'll wait until Ning Jie is free. However, one of the staff reminded Su Xian, Ning Jie is so busy, how could she have time to teach you how to act? It's best you don't add to her troubles. To be honest, after filming so many films, Tang Ning had never seen an actress like Su Xian. He was not jealous of her, nor was he trying to frame her. He was just pestering her to teach her how to act. If Su Xian was trying to scheme against her, Tang Ning would have been able to deal with her easily. But, Su Xian was simply asking for help. This made things difficult. Ning Jie, why don't I deal with Su Xian later? Lin Qian suggested. Don't go overboard. Don't hurt her self-esteem, Tang Ning reminded. Dressed in a long black dress, Lin Qian looked quiet and ladylike. Tang Ning was right. A person with this kind of taste couldn't have come from a normal family. Don't worry. After speaking, Lin Qian turned around and left. After Tang Ning returned to her next scene, she approached Su Xian and said, Miss Su, Ning Jie may not have much free time over the next 2 days. Not only will she need to go down a well, she will also need to go rock climbing, so she may not have enough rest. So, if it's not too much of a hassle, I hope you can give her some time to rest and not disturb her. Let's have a chat after she finishes filming. Su Xian understood what Lin Qian meant, so she nodded her head, okay. Actually, I'm going to be quite busy over the next 2 days. Then, it's settled. Su Xian appeared to be an easy person to talk to. She was petite and lively. But, after Lin Qian left, Su Xian spat, "Stop pretending to be a gentleman. If you don't want to teach me, then say it. If you don't want to, then say it. Why beat around the bush?" It didn't take long before Lin Qian returned to Tang Ning's side. At this time, Tang Ning was touching up her makeup. "Is everything settled?" "Yes," Lin Qian nodded. "Don't worry, Ning Jie." The next scene was a relatively dangerous scene. Su Xian's character, played by Su Xian, disobeyed her family's advice and boarded a deserted island to search for her sister. But, the people on the island stole her boat and robbed her of everything. In the end, they even tried to humiliate her. But, Tang Ning appeared and saved the child. Cut. Su Xian, is that fear? You're comparing who has bigger eyes. You should learn from Tang Ning, the director suddenly yelled. Do it again. Cut. Su Xian, your character's emotions aren't right. Cut. You can't. Su Xian was confused by the director's 7 to 8 consecutive scenes. She had no idea how to continue filming. But, the director continued to compare her to Tang Ning. Su Xian couldn't accept it. She thought to herself, Tang Ning was simply refusing to help her and refusing to teach her. Forget it. Su Xian, get some rest. Tang Ning, continue with the next scene. The next scene was Tang Ning hiding in a well to avoid being captured by pirates. Of course, filming a scene like this was quite dangerous. So, the props had to be checked and reinforced in advance. Tang Ning, get some rest for half an hour. If there are any problems, speak up loudly, the director instructed. Hearing the director's gentle words, Su Xian was unconvinced. But, a scary thought suddenly appeared in her mind. She saw with her own eyes the props master preparing a wire for Tang Ning. Chapter 798. Late at night, Quan family. Quan Zai was lying on the sofa drinking wine. He was only wearing thin pajamas and the heater in the room was not turned on. When the old housekeeper saw this, he immediately went into the room and found a furry blanket for him. "Young master, it's cold. Have you found Qian Qian?" Quan Zai narrowed his eyes and raised his wine glass high as he asked the butler. His actions were bewitching and extremely eye-catching. "We haven't found her. It's like the second miss has evaporated into thin air. We've searched the entire capital, but we still can't find her," the old housekeeper replied. "Young master, why don't we get out?" Quan Zai knew what the old housekeeper was going to say, so he said coldly, "Other people might not know, but don't you know what Qian Qian means to me?" The old steward sighed and finally said, "I will continue to help you, young master. Hopefully, madam and master won't find any clues." Quan Zai sneered, "So what if I find out?" He and Lin Qian were not related by blood to begin with. Plus, he had desires for Lin Qian. How could he possibly be a good brother to her? Second miss wouldn't want you to do this. Madam's health isn't good. She wouldn't want to agitate madam. This kind of plot sucks. Quan Zai smashed his wine glass on the floor as if he was complaining about his status. "Since that's the case, I'll cut ties with the Quan family and marry into your family. Is that okay?" The old butler did not speak again. In fact, he even hoped that Quan Zai could go out and film so that he could meet more women. Even if they were from the entertainment industry, he would accept them. "Lin Qian, don't even think about escaping." Fang Yu's investigation into Lin Qian continued. After he was done, he reported to Mo Ting in his office, "Quan Zai isn't someone that plays by the rules, but he is extremely patient with Lin Qian. No matter where Lin Qian is, he will find all kinds of excuses to appear nearby. But, Lin Qian is stubborn and has already rejected Quan Zai for many years. Even though Quan Zai has touched and kissed her, she will never give him a second chance." Interesting. Are you sure you want to keep such a dangerous person by Tang Ning's side? Fang Yu asked. If Quan Zai finds out, Beijing is going to be in chaos again. It doesn't matter, as long as Ning likes it, Mo Ting replied calmly. Tang Ning's career had stabilized, but it wasn't stable enough. Simply winning one award was not enough to solidify Tang Ning's status. So, Mo Ting was not going to stop her from acting. He wanted to make her dreams come true. As for other matters, Mo Ting knew she knew how to weigh the pros and cons. Moreover, she needed a loyal and affectionate person by her side. Lin Qian was obviously a good candidate. However, Mo Ting had no idea that something big was about to happen to Tang Ning that very night. As it was a night scene, and to create a sense of danger, Tang Ning even added artificial rain as she descended into the well. Ning Jia, it's going to be very dangerous in a moment. Are you sure you don't want to use a stunt double? Lin Qian looked at the staff and asked worriedly. There's no need. Tang Ning understood that Lin Qian hadn't gotten used to her work style, so she didn't need a substitute. She knew, if the person that replaced her was Qin Xingyan, her family would be heartbroken. Lin Qian glanced at the props in the staff's hands and reminded them, make sure to take care of Ning Jie's safety. Don't worry, this well isn't a deep one. It's already been cleaned beforehand. But, falling from such a height will still injure you, Lin Qian emphasized. Tang Ning could sense that Lin Qian truly cared about her. She was here to repay her debt of gratitude. Some people were like this. If you showed them a little kindness, they would be willing to repay you for the rest of their life. Okay, I will be careful. Okay, Tang Ning, let's begin, the director called out as the staff got into position. At the same time, Tang Ning was tied up with a steel cable, also known as a wire. Be careful. As Lin Qian watched Tang Ning act, she suddenly felt a little sad. She was reminded of Quan Zai. Did he experience the same thing when he was filming an action scene? She knew how much Quan Zai had done for her over the years, but she forced herself not to accept him because she couldn't let Mother Quan down. She had already liked Quan Zai since she was a student. But, Mother Quan had warned her that if she dared to seduce Quan Zai, she would rather commit suicide than see Lin Qian become her daughter-in-law. The humiliation from many years ago was the main reason why Lin Qian refused to accept Quan Zai. She didn't care about her pride, she simply hated him. Ning Jie. Oh God, Ning Jie. As the sound of a rope being tied was heard, all the staff froze in shock. Tang Ning had actually fallen into the well. Lin Qian ran forward and turned to the staff, stop setting up the rain. Afterwards, she tried to jump into the well, but was stopped by the staff, you can't go. It's dangerous. If Tang Ning can go, why can't I? After speaking, Lin Qian wrapped the wire around her body and said to the staff, quick, get someone to help me. Without hesitation, Lin Qian jumped into the well, Ning Jie. Ning Jie. I'm fine, Tang Ning replied. But, I can't see. Lin Qian immediately turned on her phone and saw Tang Ning sitting in the well with blood all over her arm. Are you badly injured? It's okay, I can still hold it in. You're a woman, how could you just jump in like that? Lin Qian stood at the bottom of the well and immediately ran over to check on Tang Ning's injuries. I think you scraped your arm when you fell in. Does it hurt anywhere else? Don't make a big deal out of it. Don't give Ting a call either. Just pretend this never happened, Tang Ning instructed. It's normal to get hurt on set. Are you afraid that President Mo will worry? Lin Qian exposed Tang Ning. Of course, we can keep this a secret. But, we need to know why it happened. That way, the staff will be more careful. Tang Ning looked at Lin Qian and realized she wasn't as weak as she appeared on the surface. She was actually quite strong. Ning Jie, Assistant Lin, are you okay? We'll pull you up right away, a staff member called out from the well. A moment later, Tang Ning and Lin Qian were pulled up. At this time, the director was already scolding the staff member. Su Exan was also nearby. As she saw the scene, she subconsciously looked at the safety belt that had been removed from Tangning's body. Tangning was so powerful, yet she still got hurt. Did she really think she was invincible? Pfft. Director, I've really checked it. I'm serious. In that case, check it again, Lin Qian suddenly requested coldly. Chapter 799. Everyone was shocked when they heard Lin Qian say this in a sharp tone. Who would have thought that Tangning's new assistant that didn't like to talk had such a surprising side to her? Previously, she appeared to be quiet and didn't speak much. Originally, everyone thought she was a newcomer that didn't know how to interact with people in the industry. But, seeing how protective she was of Tangning, everyone on set began to respect and fear her even more. There's always a reason for an accident. You can't just blame her and let it go. After all, this is a matter of life and death. Assistant Lin is right. We need to investigate this matter thoroughly, the director added. After all, if the person that was injured was an ordinary actor, perhaps it would be easier to talk to them. But, the person that was injured was Tangning. If Hai Rui pursued the matter, no one would be able to bear the responsibility. Assistant Lin, let's skip tonight's scenes. Take Tangning to the hospital first. Lin Qian nodded her head and looked at Tangning. The two of them had a tacit understanding. Since an incident like this happened on set, although they couldn't rule out the possibility of it being an accident, there was always a human factor involved. Everyone should go home and get some rest. Su Exan observed Tangning's movements from not too far away. As she looked at Tangning's injured arm, her expression remained calm. She knew that even if they investigated, they wouldn't be able to find out that she was the culprit. After doing this many times, she would naturally gain experience. She couldn't stand people's arrogance. After returning to her room, Lin Qian quickly checked Tangning's injury. Seeing that it was only a small scratch, she let out a sigh of relief. Luckily, it's not a serious injury. That way, I can answer to President Mo. It was just a shallow well to begin with, Tangning replied. Cold sweat broke out on her forehead as she endured the burning sensation of the disinfectant on her wound. As Lin Qian cleaned Tangning's wound, she looked at Tangning and asked, "Who do you think did this?" "I can't tell for now. From now on, we need to be more careful," Tangning replied straightforwardly. Noticing that Lin Qian's clothes were wet and dirty, she immediately reminded her, "Hurry and have a shower." "I know. But, are you sure we don't need to tell President Mo?" Lin Qian asked again. "No need," Tangning shook her head. "He's already busy enough with 2 kids at home. Then call me if you need anything." Only after Lin Qian finished bandaging Tangning's wound did she notice the clothes she was wearing. She also noticed the disgusting smell. Seeing Lin Qian turn around, Tangning couldn't help but say, "From now on, you don't need to work so hard for me." "I've always been a serious person," Lin Qian replied before returning to her room. Meanwhile, Tangning fell into deep thought. She originally thought that after receiving the most important award in the country, she would be untouchable in the industry. But, she never expected that someone would still try to mess with her. It seemed that the entertainment industry was really endless. Thinking of this, Tangning suddenly felt a deep sense of disgust towards the industry. She wished she could have a clean working environment where she wouldn't be schemed against and didn't have unspoken rules. Everyone was born to act and didn't have to deal with so many melodramatic stories. Meanwhile, in the same hotel, on the same floor, at the end of the corridor, the thing that Tangning hated so much was happening, the unspoken rules. "Why are you looking for me so late at night?" As soon as the director opened the door and saw Su Exan standing there, he quickly looked out the door, afraid that someone would misunderstand. "Director, didn't I make a lot of takes during the day? That's why I wanted to ask you for advice. I'm the director and you're an actress. Why are you asking me for advice? I've also asked Ning Jia, but she doesn't seem to care about me." Su Xian said dangerously. Help me out. Su Xian was actually dressed conservatively, so the director relaxed a little. He thought that Su Xian was actually asking for advice. But, as soon as he let her into the room, she immediately removed her jacket and stood naked in front of the director. What are you doing? Director, since you can't explain yourself now, why don't you? Su Xian deliberately got closer to the director and drew circles on his chest. I'm lonely. I don't want anything. I just want you to let me be your lover and we can meet like this from time to time. That's all I want, go away, the director pushed Su Xian away. Director, don't reject me, Su Xian was like an expert in the field of love, she knew exactly how to seduce a man's heart. Don't be fooled by her playful and harmless appearance. But, for someone with no background to get to where she was and star in such an important film, how could she be simple? The director knew that he had fallen into a trap. Even if he wanted to explain himself, if there was a naked woman in the room, what would happen to his reputation? Above all, he couldn't resist Su Xian's seduction. I simply want to be with you. After this night, a lot of things were about to change. Meanwhile, Tang Ning's fate was about to change once again. So what if she won an award? As long as she no longer appeared on screen, she would soon be forgotten. This was how cold-hearted fans were and how realistic the entertainment industry was. The next day, Tang Ning returned to the set. As soon as the director saw her off the set with her injuries, he couldn't help but say, "You didn't need to come so early." Apart from anything else, the director simply admired Tang Ning. He admired her seriousness and acting. Plus, Tang Ning was a guarantee of the box office. So, the importance that the director placed on Tang Ning wasn't just for show. But, after last night, the importance that Su Xian held in the director's heart changed. No man could resist a woman that was good in bed because it was addictive. So, when he saw Su Xian today, his expression was a lot more pleasant. Su Xian didn't deal with the director because she wanted to compete with Tang Ning. After all, she knew that she couldn't do it on her own. But, if the director wanted to increase her screen time or do something else, she would definitely be able to do it. As for teaching Tang Ning a lesson, it was necessary. Although she wasn't famous at the moment, if she had the ability to make her life a little easier, why not? Seeing Tang Ning get injured, she was extremely happy. Ningjia, it's too dangerous to film the scene in the well at night. Why don't we film it during the day? Or, we can use a stunt double. The staff on set did not dare to joke around with Tang Ning's safety. No need. Just follow the original plan. This time, there won't be a problem, Tang Ning replied. When it came to acting, Tang Ning had high expectations. We're on the run to begin with. Filming with injuries makes it more realistic. Hearing this, the staff felt helpless. Ningjia, don't make things difficult for the staff. They are simply thinking about your safety, Su Xian said as she approached. Everyone's job isn't easy. In that case, I'll ask the props team to check and maintain the props, Lin Qian said. After all, it's basic to do your job well. Chapter 800. When it came to this matter, Tang Ning wasn't going to take a step back. She was going to stay true to her identity. Plus, she didn't like it when someone else was involved in her own role. Everyone understood this. But, the staff still looked upset. She felt like Tang Ning was making things difficult for her. After all, Tang Ning insisted on not using a stunt double. Afterwards, Su Xian comforted, Ningjia is doing this for the sake of the film. She is truly professional. Who needs her to be so professional? No one can see behind the scenes and the staff are the ones being tortured. How many actors these days are as serious as she is when it comes to filming? In reality, Lin Qian wasn't too far behind the two. Although she couldn't hear their conversation, she could tell that the staff was complaining. Afterwards, Lin Qian helped Tang Ning get some water and returned to her side. Be careful of the staff's revenge. It may not seem obvious, but it's often fatal. Tangning lowered her head and took a sip of the hot water. Her voice was gentle but cold. If she dares to make a move, this time, Tangning filmed with an injury. But, even so, she still passed on her first take. Ha, no wonder she's the flying queen. She's amazing. The director gave Tangning a thumbs up. Of course, because of Tangning's professionalism, the staff no longer had to worry about her and let out a sigh of relief. Not long after, Su Xian's filming went exceptionally smoothly. In fact, she did not ask Tangning to improve her acting skills again. As a result, Su Xian's acting skills continued to improve. The director praised her because of Tangning. But, Tangning simply smiled and did not say a word. Late at night after filming, Su Xian snuck into the director's room again. After a moment of intimacy, she asked, "Can you add a few more scenes for me? Even if it's just for a few seconds." The director subconsciously furrowed his brows. Just as he was about to reject her, Su Xian used her usual tricks to make it impossible for the man to reject her in bed. In the end, the director gave in. After all, he had had his fair share of women, but none of them could make a man happy like Su Xian. Meanwhile, Tangning was having sex with Mo Ting. The couple had only been apart for a few days, but they had an endless amount of things to talk about. Mo Ting was not a talkative person. But, when it came to spending time with Tangning, especially after not seeing her for a few days, he didn't give her any time to interrupt. "Mr. Mo, I know you miss me, but please take good care of our baby." "But, I want to take care of you more," Mo Ting said seductively. "Did anything happen on set?" "Yes, everything is fine." In order not to let Mo Ting notice the scars on her arms, she deliberately wore a comfortable jacket. "Very soon, I will return home. After that, I will stay with you and the baby forever. Waiting for you to come home. But Survivor will not be the end of your acting career." Mo Ting understood the hidden meaning in her words. She had deliberately added the word forever. "Does Guogua still have a fever?" Tangning changed the subject. "Yes, but it's very mild. You should trust Lu Guangli," Mo Ting replied. "Ting." "Huh?" Mo Ting's voice was slightly seductive. "I want to hug you." "But, I want you," Mo Ting said as he looked at Tangning passionately. "No, I need to come to the set tomorrow to rest." "Do you have to be like this?" Tangning laughed. "I will be back very soon." This time, Mo Ting did not say a word. He simply looked at Tangning for a long time. But, he didn't want to waste any more of her time. He had decided that he had to see Tangning. So, after coaxing the babies to sleep, Mo Ting gave Xia Yuling a phone call and asked the two mothers to come over and take care of the babies. "Where are you going so late at night?" Xia Yuling asked. "Did something happen to Xiao Ning?" "She's fine. I just want to see her," Mo Ting said before he left the house. It took at least 5 hours to drive to the set. In other words, by the time Mo Ting arrived, it would already be daybreak. But, as long as it was related to Tangning, Mo Ting didn't mind. Just as Tangning was about to fall asleep, her phone suddenly rang. Tangning looked at the time and realized it was only 4 a.m. Thinking something had happened to the babies, she quickly sat up. But, she heard Mo Ting's deep voice, "Open the door." Tangning was in disbelief, but she still walked over to the door. As soon as she opened the door, she saw a tall man standing there. Before she could react, Mo Ting pushed her into the room and pressed her against the wall. "You're already a father of 2, how can you still be so impulsive?" Tangning sighed. "I only have 3 hours. Mo Ting did not want to waste any more time talking. He simply used the word, do. In the past, there were indeed a lot of things that were impossible, but ever since he got together with Tangning, he no longer made careless conclusions. After an intense session, Tangning fell into a deep sleep. Mo Ting originally wanted to leave quietly, but, In his sleep, Tangning held on to his hand. As soon as he moved, Tangning immediately woke up. Of course, no matter how slow he was, he could still notice the injury on Tangning's arm. But, at a time like this, he did not want to disturb her rest. Sleep a little longer. I'll walk you out. Tangning shook her head and got up. To avoid unnecessary trouble, Tangning did not plan to let the crew know that Immerse had been there. So, she was extra cautious as she walked Immerse out. But, to her surprise, just as Immerse left, she saw Su Xian emerge from the director's room at the end of the corridor. The two women's eyes met. Both had complex expressions on their faces. But, neither of them said a word as they returned to their respective rooms. The next day, just before filming began, Su Xian took advantage of Lin Qian's absence to look for Tangning and say, "I never thought Ning Jia would do something behind President Mo's back." "So, you came out of the director's room this morning?" Tangning did not explain as she asked. "I hope Ning Jia can keep this a secret. I simply like the power of the director. Of course, as a condition, I will keep it a secret." Tangning let out a gentle laugh and did not say another word. This Su Xian seemed to think that she had found a group. Su Xian thought Tangning had agreed, so she turned and left. At this time, as Lin Qian watched Su Xian leave, she asked Tangning, "Did she come to you for advice again?" Tangning shook her head as she explained to Lin Qian what she saw that morning. "So, this Su Xian is in an affair with the director and thinks you're cheating?" Lin Qian held her forehead, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Uh-huh. If that's the case, things aren't looking too good. You can't underestimate this Su Xian. This means that she may use it to threaten you during filming." Chapter 801. "In that case, let's wait and see how she plans to threaten me." Tangning lowered her eyes, but it wasn't hard to sense the wisdom hidden within. Tangning obviously didn't like being threatened. But, there were always people that wanted to throw their lives away. Did she think that because she had a relationship with the director, she could do whatever she wanted on set? Su Xian probably didn't know how to deal with the unspoken rules. During filming, because Su Xian thought she had something on Tangning, she winked at Tangning purposefully during the scene. She thought Tangning would respond, but Tangning simply glanced at her and remained calm. Su Xian was a little frustrated. She refused to believe that Tangning wouldn't feel guilty. So, she looked at Tangning again and gestured for her to go have a chat. But, Tangning still ignored her. Su Xian was so angry that she finally gave up and sat quietly to one side. After Tangning finished filming and sat down to eat, she finally approached Tangning and said, "Ning Jia, I just invited you over. I have something to say to you." "Go ahead." Tangning replied without lifting her head. Su Xian wasn't willing to give up, so she pulled out her phone from her pocket and handed it to Tangning. "This is a photo I took this morning." Tangning lifted her eyes and saw Su Xian had taken a photo of President Mo's handsome back. "I admit that I'm not a good person. But, how much better can you be? If I expose this matter, then your previous image as a good wife and mother will be destroyed." "So?" Tangning couldn't help but ask back. "I'm not asking you to be the female lead. I simply want you to help me. After all, it hasn't been easy for me to get to this point. Isn't this what you should do as a senior? Plus, I have something on you." "Don't forget, you also have an affair with the director," Tangning retorted. "But, you don't have any evidence. Plus, you won't expose it so easily. Otherwise, once the film ends, it will only be detrimental to you," Su Xian said confidently. "Am I right? I never imagined that the arrogant Tangning was just a normal person who lived on a daily basis. How do you want me to help you?" Tangning resisted the urge to laugh as she asked again. "I want you to introduce me to advertisements and give me more exposure so that I have a better chance of becoming famous," Su Xian said without holding back. "Otherwise, everyone will suffer." Su Xian thought, with Tang Ning's current status, she would definitely care about her reputation. Especially since her husband was Mo Ting. If Tang Ning really did something reckless, she would be making an enemy out of Hai Rui. So, she felt the evidence in her hands was extremely valuable. But in reality, however, Tang Ning didn't care. I hate being threatened and I'm not a well-behaved person. So, if you want to expose me, go ahead. In fact, you can choose any method you want. Su Xian was shocked. You don't care? That's impossible. Tang Ning, I know you like to play mind games with others. Fine, since that's the case, I'll give you 1 day to think about it. Do you want to keep your secret or do you want to lose your reputation? After speaking, Su Xian walked away from Tang Ning. Not long after, Lin Qian returned. As she watched Su Xian leave, she furrowed her brows. It seems, she's already tried to threaten you. As you can see, Tang Ning nodded. What does she want? She's extremely greedy and wants everything. Tang Ning shook her head helplessly. I've already obtained the surveillance footage from the hotel. No matter how Su Xian tries to expose you, it will only prove that President Mo entered your room. Lin Qian put away the evidence in her hands. But, how are you going to deal with Su Xian? After all, the director is involved. Just like she said, she has no evidence. As long as the director refuses to admit it, she will be slandering him. Tang Ning looked at Lin Qian with a deeper meaning. Of course, it's better if we can get our hands on evidence. That's a blind spot. The cameras won't be able to capture it, Lin Qian replied. This matter has become quite interesting. Tang Ning looked deeply at Lin Qian and noticed there was not a single trace of worry on her face. She was extremely calm. With this kind of mentality, it was indeed a waste for her to be her assistant. Are you sure you want to hide behind me for the rest of your life? Quan Zai will find you sooner or later. Hearing Quan Zai's name, Lin Qian's expression froze. But, she did not say anything else. All she said was, we'll talk about it when the time comes. Meanwhile, Mo Ting had noticed the scars on Tang Ning's arms. So, he sent someone to investigate Tang Ning and found out that she had fallen into a well. He also found out that she was currently investigating the culprit, so he had no choice but to buy the best scar cream and hand it to her. Tang Ning understood that this was Mo Ting's concern and also a warning. He was warning her not to get hurt again. President Mo sure treats you well, Lin Qian couldn't help but sigh. He's great. Keep an eye on Su Xian during the afternoon shoot. She must be feeling proud right now. She managed to control the director and threaten me at the same time. Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on that disgusting fly, Lin Qian replied in seriousness. Indeed, Su Xian wasn't satisfied with not being able to threaten Tang Ning that morning. So, during the afternoon's shoot, she deliberately picked on Tang Ning. The first few times, the director noticed it, but because Su Xian was his mistress, he allowed her to do as she pleased. But, towards the end, even the staff noticed that Su Xian was deliberately stealing Tang Ning's screen time. In fact, there were a few times where they even made physical contact. Su Xian. What are you doing? The director couldn't help but yell. Su Xian looked at the director and rubbed her eyes. Director, I'm sorry. I'm not feeling well. You can't keep making Tang Ning repeat herself. Even if you're not tired, she'll still be tired, the director said angrily. One more take. If you don't pass, Su Xian doesn't need to continue filming today. But, even after a few more takes, Su Xian still found all sorts of excuses and the director accepted them all. Tang Ning was a little tired, but Su Xian looked proud. She wanted to tell Tang Ning that the director only listened to her and was extremely tolerant of her. She even approached Tang Ning and whispered into her ear, "Why don't I help you get together with the director? I don't mind having 2 women serving 1 man." Tang Ning glanced at Su Xian, but did not respond. Instead, she said to the director, "Director, why don't I try out Su Xian's role and give her a demonstration?" The director looked at the two women and nodded. Here, Tangning, give Su Xian a demonstration. Chapter 802. After arriving on the island, Su Xian's character, the younger sister, was rescued by the crazy Tangning. But she was still cautious around Tangning. Especially when the two of them were camping in the bushes, the crazy woman fell asleep against a tree and the younger sister tried to knock her out and escape. Su Xian acted out this scene multiple times. Because there were a lot of inner scenes, most of them were close-ups of the younger sister's face. As for the scene where she knocked Tangning out, it was originally planned for the next scene, but Tangning told the director that she could act it out together. Okay, Tangning will give it a try, the director said. After hearing the director's words, Su Xian's expression changed. She didn't know if Tangning would take the opportunity to get revenge. So, she retorted, Director, Tangning will hurt me. Nonsense. Tangning is a professional actress. How could she possibly hurt you? The director asked. Haven't you wasted enough time? I'm serious, director. Stop talking nonsense. Once Tangning is ready, we can begin. Tangning nodded her head and immediately switched roles with Su Xian. She transformed into the suspicious younger sister that tensed up at the slightest movement. Su Xian was shocked by Tangning's expression. She never expected that Tangning would be able to get into character so quickly. Most importantly, Tangning's expression of fear, caution and fear was perfect. Especially when she swung the rock at the end. Although she didn't actually throw it at anyone, it scared Su Xian so much that she screamed and her legs turned to jelly. Excellent. The director clapped his hands. Tangning, you are a genius at acting. Tangning smiled at the director and changed back to her original appearance. But, this gave Su Xian quite a fright. Su Xian, have you remembered how to act? Su Xian was focused on patting her chest and comforting herself. How could she hear the director's words? Forget it. Let's get some rest. Tangning is tired. Su Xian couldn't move at all until her assistant ran over to help her up. At this time, Lin Qian walked over to Tangning's side and helped her put on a jacket. At the same time, she asked, Ningjia, why did you hit her? She's using vulgar language. Tangning responded to Su Xian's suggestion with a single word. But what if she does the same to you later? On set, she won't have the slightest chance of bullying me. Tangning said confidently. I will also make her pay for falling into the well. Previously, Tangning wanted to find out who the culprit was because Su Xian had yet to reveal herself. But now that the culprit had delivered herself to her doorstep, if she still didn't know who it was, it would be an insult to her intelligence. Who else on set would be as scheming as Su Xian? Lin Qian did not say a word. She simply nodded her head. She knew that there were plenty of people like Su Xian in the industry. Tangning had only met one of them. After being scared by Tangning, Su Xian became a lot more cautious when filming began. But, as soon as she thought about the fact that she was the one that threw the punch, she felt a sense of joy. After all, Tangning had reminded her that she could act like this. So, she completely followed Tangning's instructions. Like a frightened bird, she threw a prop at Tangning's head. Of course, it didn't hurt, but she still used a lot of strength. At this time, not only did Tangning not pass out, she was completely awake. As soon as she saw Su Xian's character trying to kill her, she pounced on her and pinned her to the ground as she pinched her. Great, Tangning's explosive power is amazing. At this time, Su Xian finally realized that this was a trap set up by Tangning. Tangning had deliberately led her to act like this. Su Xian's desire to teach Tangning a lesson was too strong. So, she forgot about the crazy woman that Tangning was about to act in such a way. Tangning, you're so despicable. Tangning did not say a word. She simply stood up with her chin raised. Despicable? Tangning, you really need to teach Su Xian more. When you have time, teach her more. I will, director, Tangning replied with a smile. However, she wasn't teaching her to act, but to be a person. By the time they finished filming for the day, it was already 9 p.m. Lin Qian escorted Tangning back to her room. However, along the way, they ran into Su Xian. To be exact, Su Xian deliberately chased after them. Tangning, do you want me to expose your dirty laundry? Tangning was already tired, so she was not in the mood to deal with Su Xian. Lin Qian understood how she felt, so she gestured for Tangning to return to her room and leave the rest to her. Su Xian originally wanted to chase after Su Xian, but Lin Qian stopped her. What are you trying to do? I've already told Tangning what I want. Tell Tangning to look for me in my room at 11 p.m. tonight. Otherwise, the photos in my hands will be sent to the paparazzi. I'm not sure if it's 11 p.m. or not. All I know is, if you dare to do anything reckless, the fact that I made you sleep with the director will immediately spread throughout the crew. Lin Qian pulled out her phone and opened up a group chat. Su Xian, don't blame me for not warning you. Stop disgusting people. After all, Ning Jie's patience is limited. It seems, Tangning wants to go all out. At this point, Lin Qian wanted to know what Su Xian wanted. So, she softened her tone and made Su Xian think she was actually afraid. How about this, tell me what you want and I'll see if I can help you. I knew you would be afraid. Su Xian thought she had already threatened Lin Qian, so her expression became a lot more arrogant. Recently, there's a fashion resource that I haven't been able to get my hands on. It's the cover of May's Global Style. I want Tangning to recommend me and help me get it. After hearing this, Lin Qian nodded her head. I can think about it. Let's wait for my news. That's settled then. That's a good girl. After speaking, Su Xian smiled proudly. At this time, Lin Qian directly told Tangning what Su Xian wanted to achieve. Since she wants it, let's contact the editor of Global Style. Huh? Lin Qian was a little confused. Tell the editor that they can't use Su Xian. Tangning instructed as she looked at Lin Qian. Lin Qian laughed and nodded her head. Although I don't know how to do it, I will give Vice President Fang a phone call and ask for his help. Tomorrow, she would just have to wait for a good show. Even in her wildest dreams, Su Xian never imagined that Tangning would contact the man with negative news. And, she actually thought Tangning would contact him for her. With Tangning's weakness, Su Xian was afraid that Tangning would retaliate, so she decided not to go to the director's room for a while. But, just because she didn't go, it didn't mean that the director wouldn't come looking for her. Although Su Xian was a little cautious, she still let the director into her room. But, as soon as she let him in, she fell into Tangning's trap once again. Chapter 803. The Global Style magazine wasn't like the A-list magazines that Tangning had previously appeared in. In reality, it was a fashion magazine that focused on home furnishings. But, because of this, B-list celebrities fought over the front cover. Su Xian knew exactly where she stood. She knew that she couldn't rush things. So, she simply asked Tangning for the front cover of the magazine. In fact, it was scheduled for May. Su Xian imagined that, as long as she held on to Tangning's weakness, she would never have to worry about Tangning not giving her something good. So, the Global Style magazine was only the first step. This was a resource that her manager had spent a long time trying to secure. If her manager couldn't do anything, then Tangning shouldn't have a problem, right? Not only that, Su Xian had already started to fantasize about climbing to the same position as Tangning, finding a man and marrying into a rich family. But, the next day, just before filming began, Su Xian approached Lin Qian and asked, "How's it going?" Lin Qian glanced at Su Xian and did not mind her arrogant expression. She simply replied casually, "It was too late last night and the editor of the magazine went to bed. I'll make sure to contact them today." Don't worry. In that case, I'll wait for your good news. Otherwise, don't blame me for doing something ugly. Lin Qian let out a gentle laugh without giving much of a response. She wasn't going to waste her time getting angry over someone like this. The atmosphere between the three women was a little strange. Even the staff nearby could tell that something was wrong and began to discuss amongst themselves. Hey, did you guys notice how arrogant Su Xian looks every time she speaks to Lin Qian's assistant? She's just an insignificant actress. How dare she put on airs in front of Ning Jie? Exactly. Yesterday, during filming, she even said that Ning Jie would hurt her. Who does she think she is? On the other hand, Ning Jie doesn't seem to care at all. A best actress is indeed impressive. As Su Xian left, she obviously heard the discussions around her because she turned around and glared at them. However, she did not step forward to argue with them because she knew that she didn't have the right to do so. But, at the same time, she also looked down on Tang Ning. She was obviously a slut, yet she was respected by so many people. It was so unfair. Ning Jia, I've already given Vice President Fang a phone call. Vice President Fang said it's a small matter and he will handle it. Not only will he tell the editor of Global Style not to give up on Su Xian, he will also make sure that Su Xian doesn't get any opportunities in the fashion industry, even if she already has a contract in her hands. The shooting is about to start. I'll go get ready first. Tang Ning nodded her head calmly. She insisted on doing her job to the best of her ability because this was the career that she loved. She didn't want her mood to be affected because of Su Xian. There was no need for that. Don't worry, Lin Qian smiled at Tang Ning. Tang Ning responded with a smile and headed towards the set. The reason why Tang Ning didn't feel like Su Xian was an eyesore on set was because when she was filming, she was completely focused. No matter who the other person was, in her eyes, there was only her character. But, Su Xian had a lot of tricks up her sleeves. She kept hinting with her eyes that whether she was an award-winning actress or an unknown actress, she was just a woman that liked to have fun. In reality, there was no difference between them. Soon, the morning's shoot was over. Lin Qian quickly grabbed a jacket and wrapped it around Tang Ning before leading her to lunch. But, Su Xian suddenly chased after them. To prevent Su Xian from disturbing Tang Ning, Lin Qian immediately turned around and said, "Wait for my news." After receiving an answer, Su Xian no longer had any reason to chase after Su Xian. Instead, she was filled with excitement over the fact that she was about to get her hands on a fashion resource. Su Xian's state of mind continued all the way into the afternoon, so it directly affected her filming. Although Su Xian was his lover, the director still scolded her. "Su Xian, what are you daydreaming about? Do you even know how to act?" "Director, I'm tired," Su Xian said coquettishly. Tang Ning hasn't even complained. "Why are you complaining?" the director asked. "Based on your current state, the most you will do is bask in Tang Ning's light. You don't look like an actress at all." Su Xian was very uncomfortable, but she did not refute the director. After all, it was daytime and she couldn't possibly get intimate with the director. So, she simply endured the director's scolding. Soon, she received a phone call from her manager. Su Xian knew that the magazine had received news, so she immediately asked the director for a day off and went to a hidden corner to take the call. "Su Xian, what date will you start filming in May?" Su Xian asked her manager. "What do you mean by that? What are you talking about?" Her manager was confused. "Isn't it just the front cover of Global Style?" Su Xian said confidently. "Yes, the editor of Global Style did indeed call me." "Isn't that good enough?" Su Xian interrupted her manager and let out a proud laugh. "This time, I personally went to ask for a resource. I'm amazing, aren't I?" "No, I was just about to ask you, Su Xian. How did you offend Hai Rui?" The editor of Global Style personally called us and told us not to contact the agency anymore. They are certain that they won't be using you as a model, and Hai Rui has instructed them to bear the consequences of using you. What? Su Exan was shocked. She couldn't believe her manager's words. Did they make a mistake? I didn't make a mistake. The editor of the magazine clearly told me that Tang Ning had instructed us not to use you. After hearing her manager's words, Su Exan was so angry that her body trembled. Most importantly, not only Global Style, but all the other agencies that have anything to do with Hai Rui have also made it clear that they won't consider you. Even the contract that they previously signed has been cancelled at the last minute. How did you offend Tang Ning? Su Exan's manager was frantic. It wasn't easy to find an artist that understood the rules of the industry. Yet, she was going to be destroyed just like that. Aren't you guys working together? Su Exan was no longer in the mood to continue her conversation with her manager. She immediately hung up the phone and stormed over to the set. She then approached Tang Ning and said in a low voice, "You've angered me. I'm going to deal with you later." Tang Ning's lips curved slightly. During the break, she gave Mo Ting a phone call. "Ting, where are you?" "I'll be on set in half an hour." "Okay, I'll wait for you." Although she wasn't affected by Su Exan, it was still disgusting to have a fly buzzing around your ear. So, there were some things that didn't need to be delayed any longer. Chapter 804. Tang Ning, you've really angered me, Su Exan said angrily. Su Exan had an aggressive expression on her face. She wanted to storm over to Tang Ning's room to cause trouble, but she discovered Tang Ning was already with Mo Ting. The couple were walking out of the hotel room. It seemed they were going somewhere. This was perfect. Su Exan couldn't imagine how President Mo would feel when he found out he had been cheated on. So, she quickened her footsteps and caught up to the couple. She then said to Tang Ning, "Ning Jia, there's something I want to talk to you about in private. Can we talk in private?" However, Tang Ning did not appreciate her kindness as she replied, "I'm fine. I've been hiding it from my husband. You can speak to him directly." "Are you sure?" Su Exan asked dangerously. "Aren't you afraid that I'll tell President Mo about your scandal?" "Go ahead," Tang Ning replied. Of course, her eyes were also filled with a dangerous glint. Su Exan looked deeply into Tang Ning's eyes. After realizing she was truly fearless, she pulled out her phone from her pocket, pulled out a photo and showed it to Mo Ting. "President Mo, the woman beside you, the wife that you've always doted on, has been cheating on you." After speaking, Su Exan waited to see Tang Ning's fate. After all, the man in front of her was Mo Ting. It would be strange if Tang Ning didn't receive a slap in the face. But, Mo Ting looked at Su Exan coldly. He did not say a word as he simply looked at Su Exan. "President Mo." Mo Ting received the phone and glanced at the photo. He then handed it back to Su Exan. "Next time, don't randomly take photos of my back. Your photography skills suck." After hearing this, Su Exan looked at Mo Ting in shock. "Is this your evidence?" Su Exan finally realized what was happening. It turned out, the man that left Tang Ning's room that day was Mo Ting. Not only did she think Tang Ning was cheating, she even took a photo of Mo Ting's back and used it to threaten her. Su Exan suddenly felt extremely embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I think I misunderstood." "You misunderstood." "I didn't." Mo Ting held on to Tang Ning's hand and interlocked his fingers with hers. "You've done something my wife hates the most. How do you think I should deal with you?" "Ning Jia, I won't do it again." "Please speak to President Mo." "I won't do it again," Su Exan immediately begged. However, Tang Ning simply glanced at Su Exan and held on to Mo Ting's hand as they left the hotel. She was going to leave Su Exan hanging and let her know what fear felt like. When Su Exan heard that Tang Ning didn't tell her what to do with her, she was even more frightened than before. After all, rumors had it that Tangning didn't show mercy to her enemies. So, who else could she ask for help? After thinking for some time, Su Xian decided to look for Lin Qian. Seeing that Lin Qian was eating, she walked over in tears and sat down beside Lin Qian. Assistant Lin, what happened? Lin Qian asked in a good mood. This morning, you were so proud of yourself when you threatened Ning Jie. Why are you crying now? I misunderstood Ning Jie. Can you please forgive me? If news of this gets out, it won't be good for the movie, right? Su Xian tried to use the movie to control Dun. Don't worry, Ning Jie will look at the bigger picture, Lin Qian replied. Really? You don't need to worry about me, Lin Qian smiled confidently as she looked at Su Xian with kindness. Su Xian gulped. She knew she had made a big mistake, so she didn't have the courage to stay in front of Lin Qian any longer. So, she directly returned to the hotel. As expected, during filming that night, Tangning did not mention anything. This made the guilty Su Xian relax a little. But, not too long ago, Lin Qian went to look for the director on her own during dinner. Director, did you know that Ning Jie has been threatened? Lin Qian asked. Do you know who did it? Although the director guessed that it was Su Xian, he couldn't possibly reveal the name. After all, he had a guilty conscience. Tangning acknowledges your professionalism and it's not our place to ask about your private life. But, please keep a clear mind. Su Xian has the guts to threaten Ning Jie. To achieve her goals, she will do anything. Director, please look at the bigger picture and protect the reputation of the film. This is the most common thing you've said to President Mo over the phone. After hearing this, the director's face turned red in embarrassment. After all, his secret had been exposed. As for what to do to protect the bigger picture, I'm sure it's a simple task for you. After this, Tangning will forget about this matter until the end of filming. The director understood what Lin Qian was trying to remind him. Su Xian wasn't someone that could be kept by his side for long. So, Lin Qian's words were like a wake-up call to him. It was time to put an end to things. She even dared to threaten Tangning. She was basically making an enemy out of the entire Hai Rui. Su Xian was way too gutsy. Tangning had already done his best to save face by asking Lin Qian to give him a hint. So, it was only right for him to accept her kindness. Don't worry, I will give Tangning a satisfactory answer. Even if I leave this seat, I will still forget about everything. Don't worry, director. The director nodded his head in gratitude towards Lin Qian and Tangning. If Su Xian blew up the matter and exposed it, the consequences would be unimaginable, so, the director's eyes lit up with wisdom. That night, Mo Ting took Tangning out for dinner. Seeing that her mood was not affected by Su Xian, he couldn't help but ask with a smile, did you know? Someone slandered my wife today, so I'm a little angry. There's nothing to be angry about. It's not the truth and I didn't make a big deal out of it, Tangning replied. There's no need to waste time on unimportant people. I'm angry because she dared to threaten you. Mo Ting placed a slice of steak in front of Tangning. How dare she? Tangning lowered her head and thought for a moment. Suddenly, she lifted her head and said, Ting. I have an idea that I've been planning for a long time. But, I'm not sure if you will support me. Mo Ting put down the knife and fork in his hands and used a napkin to wipe the sauce from the corner of Tangning's mouth. He then said dotingly, tell me. You know, I've never been able to refuse you. However, Tangning shook her head with a determined look, I will tell you after Survivor finishes filming. Alright, I'll be waiting. Mo Ting patted Tangning's long hair. He still treated her like the most dazzling pearl in his palm, even though they already had 2 sons. Chapter 805. After careful consideration, the director decided to use a high-pressure method to temporarily suppress Su Xian. So, he gave the scriptwriter a phone call and the two of them had a long chat late into the night. In the end, he achieved his goal. But, that night, Soo Exan felt that every minute and second she spent on set was unbearable. She actually treated Mo Ting like a wild man. Not only did she think that Tang Ning was cheating on her, she even used it to threaten her. Just the thought of it made her feel disgusted. She couldn't help but wonder what Tang Ning was thinking. That night, Mo Ting escorted Tang Ning back to the hotel and told Lin Qian to take good care of her. After Mo Ting left, Lin Qian said to Tang Ning, Soo Exan is currently beside the hotel's swimming pool. Do you want to go see her? She keeps saying that she's begging for your forgiveness. Did she tell anyone about it? Tang Ning raised an eyebrow. From the words that came out of her mouth, others would simply assume that Soo Exan saw President Mo's back and misunderstood you. There's nothing more to it than that. This is normal. But, with her crying, throwing a tantrum and threatening to hang herself, those that don't know the truth might think that you bullied her and caused her to act like a frightened bird. I'm not going to join in on the commotion. I don't want to waste any more time on her, Tang Ning replied as she removed her jacket. Let her perform. Lin Qian smiled and nodded her head, in that case, get some rest. I'll head back to my room first. Tang Ning gestured for her to return to her room. At this time, Lin Qian's phone rang a few times. But, after glancing at the caller, she ignored it. From the looks of it, it was a message from Quan Zai. Since you don't want to talk to someone, why would you keep a method that he can find? This meant that Lin Qian still cared about him and didn't completely disregard him. Ning Jia, okay, I'm not going to interfere with your personal matters, Tang Ning said before she entered the bathroom. After Lin Qian returned to her room, she allowed Soo Exan to continue tormenting herself by the poolside. Meanwhile, some onlookers approached to ask what was going on and join in the fun. But, after hearing that Tang Ning wasn't here, they were certain that this unknown artist was trying to give her more screen time. So, the words that came out of her mouth were meaningless. Soo Exan stayed up all night on her own because she wanted to see what the director's attitude towards her was. Obviously, he simply treated her as a prostitute. Soo Exan shivered from the cold, but no one paid any attention to her. In the end, she had no choice but to return to her room and stop being a joke. The next day, Soo Exan stepped onto the set. As soon as she noticed the staff looking at her strangely, she immediately puffed out her chest. She did nothing wrong, Soo Exan. As soon as the director saw Soo Exan appear in front of him, he handed her a prepared document. This is the script that the screenwriter sent over this morning. Your scenes have been changed. Have a look. Soo Exan received the script and flipped through it casually. But, she discovered that the character that was supposed to survive until the end was now sacrificed for Tang Ning as soon as she found her sister. As a result, half of her scenes had been cut. Director. Soo Exan angrily tried to argue with the director, but the director simply smiled and said, "This is the screenwriter's decision. This is the screenwriter's decision. I have no choice. Actually, this is good because I have a familiar crew that is currently preparing for it. I wanted to recommend you, but you didn't have a schedule previously. Now is the perfect time." The director used his usual method to beat around the bush. Not to mention, the production was still in the middle of preparation. Even if they were ready and the director recommended her, the production might not necessarily accept her. Could it be that she didn't know what the director was planning? So, she whispered to the director, "Director, I have something to say to you." "If you have something to say, then say it here," the director replied. "Are you really not afraid that I'll expose our relationship?" "Ha, Soo Exan, you're just taking things too hard. Regardless of how many people believe you, even if some people believe you, who will have the most influence? I can move behind the scenes as long as I don't appear in front of the public. But, what about you? If your relationship is exposed, do you think you'll survive in the entertainment industry? Su Xen never expected that the director was even more shameless than she was. What did you say when you seduced me? You said that you didn't want anything and that you were simply lonely. Did I say that? Su Xian's expression didn't look good. She looked disgusted, like she had swallowed a fly. But she was the one who asked for it. She had provoked someone she shouldn't have. After enduring for a long time, Su Xian finally accepted the script. I hope the director can keep his promise and recommend me to another production. Of course, the director replied casually. Su Xian was extremely disgusted with herself. Ever since she debuted, although she hadn't made it big, no one had been able to escape her clutches. Yet, this time, not only did she not manage to gain any benefits, she even ended up spending a few nights with the director for nothing. And all of this was caused by Tang Ning. Seeing that Tang Ning was still respected on set, Su Xian felt like she was possessed. It didn't matter. Even if her scenes were cut, she still had a chance to get revenge. Since Tang Ning had made her suffer, she wasn't going to let her have it easy. Just wait and see. Lin Qian noticed Su Xian's expression from afar and knew that the director had made a move. So, she approached Tang Ning and reminded, this woman may hold a grudge against you. We need to be more careful from now on. Did you think that if you let her have it easy, she would be grateful to you? Tang Ning laughed as she shook her head. If she really got her way, it would be too unfair for others. Even though the industry has always been competitive. I understand. I will keep an eye on her from now on. Su Xian acted like nothing had happened. But she wasn't going to let the entire crew of Survivor off easy. After this incident, Su Xian calmed down a lot. But this did not lower Lin Qian's guard against her. Because Lin Qian had a feeling that this was the calm before the storm. Su Xian's scenes are about to finish. If she's smart, she will agree to the director's suggestion and go to another production. Do you think that Su Xian's brain has gone haywire? Lin Qian asked. What do you think? Tang Ning's eyes were filled with wisdom. If she's actually a sensible person, she will know that if she continues to cling on to the director, she will definitely have a better life than before. I'm just afraid that she has the intention to die with her. Lin Qian finished the hidden meaning behind Tang Ning's words. Recently, Su Xian hadn't been talking much and had been immersed in filming on her own. So, it was highly likely, I'll go investigate who she's been seeing lately. Chapter 806. Su Xian completed all of her scenes on set as per normal. Then, amidst a wave of applause, she was finally done. At this time, Tang Ning still had a few thousand scenes to go. Lin Qian looked into Su Xian's background, but she did not do much. All she did was occasionally visit a nearby clinic to get some medicine to treat her headaches. Perhaps we're overthinking things, Lin Qian said. Tang Ning remained silent for a moment, but her thoughts weren't simple. Although we promised the director that we would forget about his private life, we should still remind him to be wary of Su Xian. It's not good to talk about something like this in person, Lin Qian replied. After Su Xian finished filming, the director kept his promise and handed the script to Su Xian. Contact the person you've marked in the script. He will arrange a role for you. Director, come to my room tonight. I have something important to tell you, Su Xian said with a pale face. I'm pregnant with your child. The director froze in disbelief and began to doubt Su Xian's words. We used birth control, but I'm still pregnant, Su Xian said in seriousness. I'm not asking for anything else. It's not a good place to talk. Let me know if you want to keep the child or not. I won't bother you anymore. We can talk over the phone. You are the child's father. You should say goodbye to him. After speaking, Su Xian left, leaving the director in a daze. The director's heart was in a mess. In fact, he didn't know what to do until his eyes met with Tang Ning and Lin Qian's. However, at this time, the director avoided Tang Ning's gaze and pretended like nothing had happened. Tang Ning knew what was going on, so she did not force the director. Instead, she waited until it was time for dinner before she said, "Director, things were supposed to be simple. I hope things don't get too ugly in the end. I don't want my crew to be involved in so many dirty things. Otherwise, I don't think I'll be able to continue working here. You need to understand the responsibility that you have on your shoulders." The director sighed. In the end, he had no choice but to tell the truth. "Actually, it's not unreasonable for Su Xian and I to be together. After all, my ex-wife and I already divorced 2 years ago. It's not an issue of morality, it's just a normal relationship. Tang Ning, I know you can't stand to see dirty things like this. It's my fault for not being able to control myself, but I'm not completely blinded by lust. I didn't disrupt the filming process. Since that's the case, the director should make it clear that we have to strike first in case someone else takes the initiative." Tang Ning said with a hidden meaning. After hearing Tang Ning's words, the director let out a laugh. The gloominess on his face disappeared as he raised his thumb at Tang Ning. "You are indeed an expert." Tang Ning did not say another word. She simply smiled. After all, no one hated these dirty schemes more than she did. I remember that Win Ting Media wanted to do an interview on Survivor. Just nice, the director finally understood. That was all that mattered. Tang Ning finally relaxed. Regardless of what Su Xian was plotting, as long as the director made things clear, no matter what they did, they wouldn't be able to blame him. On the other hand, as soon as Su Xian revealed any dirt, the entire world would feel sorry for the director. After filming was completed, Su Xian continued to wait in the hotel. But she had no idea that the director was currently being interviewed by the media. Apart from promoting Survivor, the director appeared to be in a particularly good mood. This naturally attracted the attention of the media. I wonder if something good has happened to the director. He seems to be in a good mood. To be honest, in order to protect my family's privacy, my ex-wife and I have been divorced for 2 years without announcing it to the public. But I'm about to become a father, so I want to consider the mother of my child and not let anyone misunderstand her. In that case, I must congratulate the director. I wonder who will be lucky enough to receive this blessing. The female lead that we just finished filming tonight, Su Xian, the director said in seriousness. We met because of filming, so I hope everyone can give us their blessings. That's great. In reality, the media wasn't focused on the director's personal matters. But, since the director had spoken, they naturally had to congratulate him. Soon, news spread throughout the industry. At this time, Su Xian's manager immediately gave her a phone call. "How did you end up in a relationship with the director?" Su Xian was confused. "How did you know?" "Your director has already publicly admitted to it. Since you've offended Hai Rui, it's not a bad idea to find a backer." "Congratulations." After hearing her manager's words, Su Xian immediately unlocked her phone and searched for news. But, a moment later, she smashed her phone on the floor. After all, she had originally schemed against the director to destroy his reputation. But, he actually confessed his love for her and told everyone that she was pregnant with a child. In reality, her stomach was empty. She simply wanted to lure the director here. But, she ended up shooting herself in the foot. As soon as she admitted that she wasn't pregnant, the director could turn around and accuse her of lying. Soon, the director arrived as promised. Previously, he was acting sneakily, but now, he was acting openly. Su Xian reminded herself to stay calm. She wanted to take this opportunity to test whether the director was being sincere or not. "I never thought that you'd already gotten a divorce. Since you truly love me, let's live happily together from now on, okay?" Su Xian asked gently. "Of course, my precious." But, I need to take you to the hospital for a checkup to see if the baby is healthy. You've done so many dangerous things in the past, I'm afraid that it might affect the baby. Su Xian's expression immediately changed. What's wrong? The director asked despite knowing the answer. It's too late right now. Can we go tomorrow? The director nodded his head and protected her, whatever you say. Su Xian's emotions were extremely complicated, because she didn't know whether the director was being serious or not. No, it couldn't be fake. Although the director wasn't stupid, he wasn't exactly smart when it came to relationships. After being seduced by a woman, he didn't know how to reject her. It was impossible for him to suddenly be enlightened. So, the only explanation was that the director was serious about her. Even if he wasn't serious about her, he still wanted a child. Unfortunately, she didn't have a child in her stomach. What was she to do? That night, Su Xian was destined to be nervous. But, how was she going to get past tomorrow? Ning Jia, you're amazing, Lin Qian praised as she watched the situation turn around. Now, we have the upper hand. As soon as Su Xian makes a move, it will be her fault. Lin Qian couldn't help but praise Tang Ning as she watched the situation turn around. Chapter 807. That's because the director hasn't completely lost his mind. Plus, we can't let Su Xian ruin the entire film on her own. After all, the other members of the crew didn't do anything wrong. That's true, Lin Qian nodded. Lin Qian nodded. I just went to look at your job description. Are you going to take on another show after Survivor? After all, other actors of Tang Ning's stature usually had a year-round schedule filled to the brim. But, looking at Tang Ning's schedule, it seemed, after the end of Survivor, she did not have any other plans. I want to go home and spend time with my sons, Tang Ning replied. Aren't you taking the opportunity to build momentum? Are you afraid that you won't have a job while I'm off? Tang Ning suddenly propped herself up and smiled at Lin Qian. Don't worry, you'll be busy. I have other plans. Lin Qian didn't know what Tang Ning had up her sleeves, so she simply listened. After all, the answer would be revealed when the time came. That night, Su Xian tossed and turned by the director's side, unable to fall asleep. The director knew what Su Xian was panicking about, so he simply smiled coldly in the dark and went to sleep. Luckily, he listened to Tang Ning's words and didn't fall into this vicious woman's trap. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Tomorrow, it was time to see how Su Xian would continue acting. From this, it was clear to see that Tang Ning was indeed like the rumors said. Not only was her acting impressive, but she was also extremely disciplined and flawless. She had met her savior. The next morning, Su Xian wanted to wake up as soon as possible in an attempt to salvage the situation. But, to her surprise, the director woke up even earlier than her. In order not to delay filming, let's go early. Su Xian clenched her fists tightly. She wanted to tell the truth, but she couldn't muster the courage to do so. It wasn't until the couple stepped out of the house that Su Xian's face turned pale. What's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? The director asked. I've heard that pregnant women tend to be emotionally unstable and feel unwell. Let's hurry to the hospital. No. Su Xian shook her head. Then let's go. The director directly drove Su Xian to the OB/GYN department at a nearby hospital with an obvious look of joy on his face. Su Xian clenched her fists. She originally wanted to run away, but the director did not give her a chance. Even when they were going to the bathroom, he waited outside the door. Soon, Su Xian was pushed into the ultrasound room. At this time, Su Xian nervously prepared to explain why she wasn't pregnant. A few minutes later, the director received Su Xian's report. His expression was unreadable. Didn't you say you were pregnant? I did indeed use a pregnancy test and the higher-ups told me that I'm pregnant, Soo Exan explained. What about the pregnancy test? Don't tell me you threw something so important away. I threw it away. Soo Xin replied with her head lowered. Then where did you throw it? I'm going to find it. Even if it's in a pile of rubbish, I'm going to find it. After speaking, the director dragged Soo Xin away excitedly. Did you know? I thought you were really pregnant and even announced the fact that I divorced my ex-wife. But what about you? How did you treat me? You can do whatever you want. After speaking, the director left Soo Xin behind and drove back to the set. Meanwhile, Soo Xin stood in the hallway of the hospital with her fists clenched in anger. She knew that as soon as the director announced that she wasn't pregnant, she would be finished. The director had done so much for her, yet she deliberately lied to him. Just the thought of it made her feel like drowning in the spittle that was being spat on the outside. After returning to the set, the director returned to work as usual. It was as if Soo Xin's incident had never happened. After all, he knew that no matter how much Soo Xin struggled, it would no longer affect the production. As soon as the morning's filming was completed, the director approached Tang Ning and apologized. Thank you for reminding me. I didn't let that slut Soo Xin blow up the situation. She was indeed faking her pregnancy. Director, I did this for the sake of the crew, not to please you. I know, the director nodded. Regardless of what happened, you've helped me a lot. From now on, if you need anything, I will do it for you. Tang Ning smiled and did not say another word. As long as the director learned his lesson and didn't fall for such a cheap trick, that would be the best way to thank her. Don't worry. With a Survivor, you will definitely win another Best Actress award. Soo Xin was currently hiding in the dark as she watched the director and Tang Ning speak. Although she couldn't hear what they were saying, she had a feeling that the incident had something to do with Tang Ning. Only Tang Ning had the ability to turn the situation around. With this thought, Soo Xin clenched her fists. It was Tang Ning again. Not too far away, Lin Qian arrived with Tang Ning's lunch. The couple began to chat and laugh like nothing had happened. But Soo Xin knew how unwilling and unconvinced Soo Xin was. The director exposed Soo Xin, so she shouldn't have reacted. She will definitely seek revenge, Tang Ning said as she ate. You need to be careful. I know, Lin Qian nodded. Flies like that are the most disgusting. You know they don't do much damage, but you have no choice but to chase them away because they are flies. She could have chosen to walk the path of innocence. But, the path of innocence has no way of surviving in this industry, Lin Qian sighed. Of course, you are an exception. Tang Ning did not say another word. Her heart simply ached for those that were talented, but didn't know how to deal with the world. Soo Xin watched the couple from the dark like she wanted to rip them to shreds. But, she did not act impulsively. Instead, while the director was on his lunch break, she approached him and asked, "Do you look hurt at all? You're just putting on an act, aren't you? Don't forget, you lied to me first." The director humphed. So, you came up with this idea to keep me in check, didn't you? No, you didn't come up with this idea. To be exact, Tang Ning came up with it. Am I right? Soo Xin asked excitedly. The director did not respond. You're admitting it? Very well, Soo Xin sneered. Soo Xin sneered. In her heart, she swore to herself, I will definitely make those two women disappear from the face of this world. If you don't have anything else to say, you can go report to the new crew. I won't announce this matter to the public, so you can stop clinging to me. After speaking, the director pushed Soo Xin away. After a while, you will be able to tell everyone that we've broken up. Then, you can find someone else to carry out your shameless act. On the surface, you're looking for a prostitute, but in reality, you're using her for your own benefit. What else can I do? Su Xan laughed. I have no background. The director pointed to Tangning not too far away. She was also tricked out of everything. How much worse is she than you? Chapter 808. It was Tangning again. Everything was because of Tangning. The feeling of defeat wasn't something that anyone could understand. It's because she's good that I lost to her. After saying this, Su Xian finally left the director's side. But, seeing Tangning being respected by so many people, the anger in Su Xian's chest reached its boiling point. We've finally sent this plague away. The director sighed mercilessly as he watched Su Xian leave. There were some people that he was cold towards. Of course, this was also because Su Xian's motives weren't pure, so she didn't deserve his sympathy. But, after Su Xian left the director's side, she did not walk out of the set. Instead, she walked over to Tangning and glared at her with hatred. We're not done yet. It's time for you to report to your new production. Tangning reminded. I hate you. You hate yourself for delivering yourself to them, yet you've achieved nothing, Tangning replied straightforwardly. Tangning, I'm not going to let this go, Su Xian yelled in front of everyone. It sounded like she was extremely angry. Everyone on set turned to look at the trio and began to discuss what had happened. But, Su Xian did not explain anything as she quickly left the set. As soon as Su Xian left, everyone turned to look at Tangning. What happened? Why was Su Xian so agitated? That's why bad people never look at themselves. They judge others by the standards of a saint and judge themselves by the standards of a slut, Lin Qian sighed. Tangning, get ready for the next scene. A moment later, the director's voice was heard. As soon as Tangning heard this, she immediately stood up from her seat and walked over. After Su Xian left, the crew no longer discussed her. Apparently, she had already reported to her new production and filming for Survivor continued to speed up. However, as she hadn't seen her two sons in a while, the director decided to give Tangning some time off after a few important scenes so she could return home to relieve her feelings of longing. Mo Ting originally wanted to pick her up in his car, but Tangning's heart ached for his work, so she asked Lin Qian to drive. It was already 10 p.m. Tangning was resting in the back seat of the van. Lin Qian glanced at Tangning from the rearview mirror and realized she was fast asleep. She couldn't help but slow down the car. But soon, Lin Qian noticed a black sedan following behind them. Lin Qian was afraid that the paparazzi might have misunderstood, so she deliberately drove into a small alley. But, to her surprise, the paparazzi followed her. Lin Qian was a little flustered. She drove the car back onto the wide road, only to find that the man had turned on the high-beam headlights and was speeding up at full speed, forcing Lin Qian into the protective fence on the far right. Tangning, who was resting, also felt something was wrong. As she opened her eyes, she saw a car on the left trying its best to ram into them. Ning Jia, hurry, and call the police. It's that crazy Su Xian. Hold on. Tangning pulled out her phone. Just as she was about to make a call, the black car suddenly rammed into her. A loud crash shocked everyone. The van Tangning was in had been deformed by the black Mercedes-Benz. The surrounding people couldn't help but sigh. How much hatred was there? Late at night, Mo Ting was coaxing his two sons at home. Suddenly, Guo Guo burst into tears without any warning. Xia Yuling immediately ran over to help. After checking on Guo Guo, she realized he was fine. Why are you crying so sadly all of a sudden? Tang Tang was sleeping soundly. It seemed, even if the sky collapsed, it would not affect his sleep. Xiao Ning hasn't been home for a while. He must be missing his mother. Mom, take care of him for a while. I'm going to make a phone call. However, Mo Ting made a few phone calls, but no one got through. Just as he was feeling confused, he received a phone call from Lu Che, President. Something happened to the madam. Mo Ting's eyebrows furrowed. Welcome to Late Night News. The latest news is that the famous actress, Tang Ning, was tailed by a black car on Central 3rd Ring Road at 10:41 p.m. tonight and deliberately rammed into her. The incident was sudden and the scene was tragic. At this time, we do not know if there were any casualties. Xia Yuling had only seen Mo Ting rush out the door a moment ago, but she didn't know what he was up to because she didn't have time to ask. So, when she heard the news on TV, she froze in shock. She was so shocked that she couldn't say a word. Indeed, the incident was sudden and the media also caught wind of it. Many of them even wore their clothes inside out as they rushed to the scene to get first-hand information. But, because they didn't know the truth, the media could only speculate like the netizens. The words Tang Ning's car accident quickly became a trending topic. In fact, it exploded. Who chased after her and hit her? How could there be such a big grudge? I saw the video taken by a passerby. Fuck, Tang Ning's van was pushed to the right and then deformed. The van was already in such a state. The chances of the victim being okay are slim, right? It's such a shame that she only just won the Best Actress award. Lu Che and Mo Ting immediately appeared at the hospital that the trio was taken to. Lu Che was responsible for blocking the media from entering, while Mo Ting's eyes were devoid of anything else. His eyes were filled with hostility. One look was enough to make people stay away. Mr. Mo, Mrs. Mo is in this room, the nurse said as she pointed to the emergency room. But, you can't go in right now. Get out of the way, Mo Ting squeezed out 2 words. The nurse was no longer frightened as her body trembled. So, she couldn't stop Mo Ting from barging in. Ting, on the hospital bed, the doctor was currently treating the wound on Tang Ning's arm. Luckily, she didn't suffer any other injuries. Mo Ting pushed the doctor aside and hugged Tang Ning tightly in his arms. Thank God you're okay. Thank God, I'm fine, Tang Ning comforted the trembling man. Thank God I'm okay. Thinking back to that moment, Tang Ning felt a sense of fear. At that moment, she really thought she was going to die. But, if she died, what would happen to Mo Ting and the child? If she died, what would happen to Mo Ting and the child? As she thought about it, tears began to roll out of her eyes. I'm fine. I'm really fine. Don't worry, Mr. Mo and Mrs. Mo are just in shock. There are no other major problems. As for the other 2 patients, they're fine too. You don't need to worry too much. At that moment, Mo Ting had no one else in his heart. Chapter 809. Tang Ning could sense that, even though the weather wasn't too hot, Mo Ting's body was covered in a thin layer of cold sweat. He was afraid. When this man stood in front of everyone, he was indomitable and merciless. No one had ever been afraid of him. But, at this moment, he was truly afraid. I'm fine, I'm really fine. Tang Ning couldn't care less about her fear. She simply wanted to comfort this man first, she couldn't bear to see him so worried. However, Mo Ting refused to let go. It wasn't until a long time later that Tang Ning's hands were numb that he finally let go. Let's go check on Lin Qian and Su Xian first. Just as Tang Ning was about to check on their injuries, Mo Ting stopped her. Lu Che has already gone to check on them. However, this time, it seemed, Su Xian was the one who was hurt. The next morning, at the Quan family villa. After an entire night, Tang Ning's car accident was already spreading like wildfire. Even though, if it was a normal day, Quan Zai wouldn't have cared. After all, he didn't care who was on the headlines that day. But, the old housekeeper found a video and handed it to Quan Zai. Young master, have a look at this. Quan Zai lazily opened his eyes. His gaze was flirtatious like a cat that had just woken up. What nonsense is this? Quan Zai received the phone and opened the video. After watching it for 2 minutes, he sat up straight on the sofa. So, she went to work as Tang Ning's assistant. No wonder I couldn't find her anywhere in Beijing. Did you call the hospital to confirm it? Yes, young master, the housekeeper nodded his head in seriousness. Luckily, the second miss only suffered a minor injury. After hearing this, Quan Zai let out a gentle laugh. She hid from me to this extent, but what's the point? She's still going to be found in the end. What do you plan to do, young master? To the hospital, Quan Zai said before he stood up from the sofa and grabbed the keys to his Maserati from the coffee table. After putting on his sunglasses, Quan Zai hopped into his car. He did not say a word, but in his heart, he was praying, Lin Qian, continue to run. Unlike Tang Ning, Lin Qian didn't injure her arm. Instead, she hit her head. Although her head was fine after an examination, she was still unconscious for the entire night. She only opened her eyes the next morning. Lu Che was standing by Lin Qian's bedside. As soon as she woke up, he handed her a glass of water. Are you okay? Lin Qian nodded her head. It seemed, after sleeping all night, she couldn't make a sound. That's good. Ning Jie. And that crazy woman. They, okay. Lu Che replied. The madam only suffered some minor injuries. As for that crazy woman, she's probably in trouble. Lu Che shrugged. Lin Qian closed her eyes again. Just as she was about to rest, a man wearing sunglasses suddenly entered the room. Lu Che immediately asked, Sir, you seem to have entered the wrong room. Quan, Quan Ti Quan, Ti Ting, Quan to Quan. As soon as Lu Che saw that it was Quan Zai, he immediately understood. So, he glanced at Lin Qian and walked out of the room, leaving the siblings alone. Quan Zai immediately closed the door and locked it. He then walked over to Lin Qian and sat down on the chair in front of the bed. You seem to be having fun hiding from me. Lin Qian closed her eyes, not wanting to say a word. Lin Qian, I think I've used the wrong strategy against you. That's why you've hurt me for so many years. Quan Zai wasn't angry. But, his smile didn't seem innocent. Lin Qian opened her eyes and stared at Quan Zai. What do you want to do? After you leave the hospital, move into my apartment and live with me. That's right, we're living together. Quan Zai said as he pulled out his phone. Otherwise, I'm going to call my mother right now and tell her about our relationship. You're going to kill your mother. It doesn't matter. I'm just that selfish, Quan Zai replied smoothly. You're crazy. I was forced by you. You're still forcing me to my death, Lin Qian said as she looked at Quan Zai with determination. It's good to be Tang Ning's assistant. Plus, I don't want to live with you. I won't be threatened by anyone. Quan Zai looked at Lin Qian and felt as if his heart had been stabbed. After all these years, you're still as difficult to deal with as before. You should have known this a long time ago, Lin Qian replied straightforwardly. Aren't you afraid that you'll force me to my death? Quan Zai suddenly laughed. After all, if I die, you guys won't have to suffer anymore. What do you think? You don't have to die. All you have to do is stop clinging to me. Obviously, their relationship was still as stiff as it had always been and there was no chance of any progress. Otherwise, wouldn't all the pain they'd endured over the years have been for nothing? Tang Ning stood outside the door and watched everything that was happening. But, it seemed, Quan Zai couldn't do anything to Lin Qian. In the end, she turned around and headed over to Su Xian's room. As soon as she saw Su Xian sitting expressionlessly in bed, she approached her and looked at her. You're lucky you didn't die from the crash. Su Xian lifted her head and smiled mockingly when she saw that Tang Ning was fine. There's no need for you to do that, Tang Ning said coldly. You threw away your bright future and insisted on taking a gamble. That's right, I was taking a gamble. What's wrong with that? Su Xan laughed. After all, I'll be spending the rest of my life in prison. Are you happy now? You asked for it. After speaking, Tangning turned around to leave Su Xian's room. But, she suddenly heard Su Xian's voice behind her. Tangning, you've always been good at cleaning up the stains on your body, right? But, there are some stains that you can never get rid of. Tangning didn't understand what Su Xian meant, and Su Xian didn't understand either. She had already hit someone with her car, so how could she regret it? I'm actually quite curious as to what I've done to piss you off, Tangning asked without turning around. Tangning did not turn around. She simply asked, for you to sacrifice yourself like this and risk your life for it. You should know better. With this answer, Tangning turned around and left. How could she know better? Meanwhile, Su Xian revealed a mocking smile. She was determined to destroy Tangning. After visiting the two women, Tangning returned to her room to find Lu Che reporting something to Mo Ting. Madam, I've found something. What did you find? Tangning approached curiously. Lu Che handed her a piece of information. It turns out, this Su Xian suffers from bipolar disorder. She's mentally ill. Tangning furrowed her brows. Just as she was about to speak, a nurse suddenly knocked on the door and said, Miss Su has committed suicide. Chapter 8:10. Is she dead? Lu Che asked. She's dead, the nurse nodded. Not only did she cut her wrist, she also stabbed her own organs and injured her vitals. Her heart stopped beating on the way to the hospital. Not only is she ruthless to others, she's even more ruthless to herself, Lu Che sighed. Plus. The nurse's expression was ugly. After a moment of silence, she continued, she left a suicide note saying that Miss Tang isn't a good person. She also said the same thing on the way to the hospital. Even on her deathbed, this Su Xian still wants to drag someone down with her. Mo Ting and Tangning looked at Lu Che. Mo Ting then said, immediately get some PR to suppress the news. If a single leak gets out, I will hold you responsible. I understand, President. After hearing this, Tangning lowered her head in deep thought. At this time, Mo Ting pulled her into his embrace and comforted, this has nothing to do with you. It was a human life, a human life. Although Tangning hadn't done anything wrong, for someone to suddenly disappear like that, especially because of hatred towards her, her heart was filled with torment and shock. She never expected to experience something like this. She never expected that a life was so precious that someone would abandon it just like that. In fact, the reason for it was because of her. Ting, let's just call the police. There's no need for PR, Tangning suddenly lifted her head and pleaded. She left a suicide note and so many people heard what she said. There's no way the truth will be covered up. Plus, the police will investigate and announce it to the public. Do you know what this means? Mo Ting asked calmly. I've said it before, it's not your fault. Ting, you understand me, Tangning said as she held on to Mo Ting's arm. Even if the matter is suppressed for now, what if it gets dug up? What about when that happens? I like to be honest. Plus, you've already said that I didn't do anything wrong. So, what do I have to be afraid of? Mo Ting looked deeply into Tangning's eyes. At this moment, all that was left in his chest was anger. This is Beijing and this is the entertainment industry. If I say you're wrong, then you're wrong. Otherwise, no one can say that you're wrong. After speaking, Mo Ting immediately gave Lu Che a phone call, immediately call the police and tell them the truth. But, the news will definitely be ugly. What are you afraid of? Understood, President. Lu Che put away his phone and headed straight for the police station. Of course, with the intervention of the police, the nature of the incident was different. The rumors were already bad to begin with, but now, Soo Exeon was dead. Before he died, he even scolded Tangning for not being a good person. Oh God, what kind of heinous thing did Tangning do for Soo Exeon to react like this? I heard that Soo Exeon once threatened Tangning on set. How deep is the hatred between the two of them? Tangning actually forced Soo Exeon to commit suicide. Isn't it too serious to force him to death? Why would Tangning force an unknown actor to commit suicide for no reason? She's not that free. If this isn't forcing him to his death, then what is? Tangning is going to get a good show. I'm curious about the grudge between the two of them. Curious +1. I feel like Tangning is in trouble this time. Oh God, don't be like this. This incident cannot have anything to do with Tangning. Last night, it was a car accident. Today, it was a suicide. With the two incidents stacked together, the situation became a lot more serious. Afterwards, Hairui released an official statement. First, they reported Tangning's condition and confirmed that she was fine. Then, they explained to the public, in regards to Soo Exeon and Tangning, we will compile a detailed report and reveal the truth to the public. This was in line with Tangning's usual style. As long as she could be transparent, she didn't want to lie for the sake of PR. However, this time, she felt that it would be difficult for her to completely disassociate herself from the incident with Soo Exeon. Plus, she didn't intend to disassociate herself from the incident. She simply wanted to restore the truth. What do you mean we'll compile a report? Are you trying to make up a story? A life has already been lost. Why isn't Tangning stepping out to explain herself? Is she trying to go to heaven? That's right. Why is she asking Hairui to do PR? I'm afraid it won't work this time. The backlash from the public was exactly what Mo Ting expected. But, no matter how bad the situation was, this was Tangning's choice. As her husband, he had to protect her until the end. He knew, if Tangning didn't explain herself, she would forever have a knot in her heart and would never be able to continue filming. What if I stopped filming and stayed at home to take care of you and our child? What do you think? Seeing Tangning's forced smile, Mo Ting's heart ached, as long as you're happy. But, I still need to clarify this matter for you. But, it wasn't going to be easy. For Soo Exeon, death was a form of release. But, in the eyes of others, she had sacrificed her life to tell them that Tangning wasn't a good person. This was going to leave a deep impression on them. It was going to be enough to destroy the image that Tangning had built up in the past. This was Tangning's most difficult hurdle. Because, no matter how much PR she tried, she couldn't disassociate herself from the incident. Not long after, Long Jia gave Tangning a phone call and asked, "Is that woman crazy? What did you do to her? Why does she commit suicide so easily?" Tangning was originally feeling a little depressed, but as soon as she heard Long Jia's voice, she suddenly laughed. "Do you really believe that I didn't do anything to her? Are you kidding me? Who does she think she is?" Long Jia scoffed. "You should just be an actress." If others don't make the first move, you've always been kind. Since you're aware of this, isn't that enough? But, this PR isn't going to be easy. Long Jia was still worried. I heard from Lu Che that you are going to reveal everything to the public. In other words, you are going to tell everyone that the crazy woman left her last words and wrote a suicide note to scold you. Tangning, do you know? This matter isn't something that can be solved with PR, I know, Tangning replied. But, who are you? You are Tangning, I trust you. Long Jia suddenly became optimistic. If worst comes to worst, I'll just quit being an actress. Coincidentally, I have an idea that I was looking for an opportunity to tell you. This is the perfect time. Go ahead. I want to start a management agency, Long Jia said in seriousness. Lu Che's mother has always looked down on me. This time, she even despised me for giving birth to a daughter. So, no wonder we've been friends for so many years, Tangning agreed. Actually, I have the same idea as you. Our agency needs to be special. Otherwise, one hai rui is enough for the entertainment industry, Long Jia continued. Yes, that's right. That's why I've already asked Lin Qian to look for talented artists that have been overlooked, Tangning added. Oh God, I feel like we have a tacit understanding, Long Jia exclaimed excitedly. Long Jia couldn't help but cry out in excitement, so, Ning, don't be afraid. Just do what you want to do, we can always start over again. After speaking to Long Jia, Tangning put down her phone and looked at Mo Ting. Ting, help me arrange a press conference. Chapter 811. Why was an actress cursing at Tangning even at the moment of her death? Plus, the two of them had no history with each other in the past. In fact, they didn't even know each other. So, what kind of hatred did Su Xian have for her to get into a car accident one day and then commit suicide the next? In the eyes of a normal person, unless they were forced to do something extreme, no one would be willing to do something like that. So, everyone assumed that Tangning was the main culprit. Apart from the fact that Tangning had always been ruthless, did Su Xian really suffer a huge injustice? The media were all discussing the incident and speculating about it. All sorts of rumors began to spread. But, the happiest people were probably the enemies that Tangning had previously suppressed. Tangning was too ruthless and forced someone to die. From the moment Tangning announced her comeback, she has been slandered and it gets worse every time. Originally, I thought that if she won the Best Actress award, her reputation would be smoother. Who would have thought? Tangning, hurry up and explain yourself. If you don't explain yourself, don't even dream of becoming everyone's idol. How did Tangning treat Su Xian? I want you to explain everything in detail. I heard that before Su Xian committed suicide, she had a conversation with Tangning. Tangning, you need to take responsibility for Su Xian's death. That bitch Tangning finally caused someone to die. Are you happy now? What Best Actress? She's a murderer. Faced with an unprecedented attack force, not only Tangning, but even the people around her were tired. These fans sure are heartless. Previously, they kept saying how much they loved the madam. Yet, at a time like this, they immediately changed their attitude, Lu Che sighed. President, what should we do now? This matter is not easy to deal with. Arrange for a press conference in 3 days, Mo Ting said. We can't just go and argue with a dead person. But, the madam, you don't need to worry about her. Mo Ting looked deeply into Lu Che's eyes, gesturing for him to shut up. I understand. After answering Mo Ting, Lu Che immediately left Mo Ting's office to contact and arrange for the media to arrive on time. Afterwards, the police conducted an investigation into Su Xian's death. But, they did not find anything strange. Not only did they have a close relationship with Tangning, they didn't even have any basic contact. After all, Tangning's phone number was nowhere to be found, let alone any other means of contact. Afterwards, the police questioned Su Xian about her relationship with the director of Survivor. The director honestly explained that he and Su Xian were a normal couple. Previously, Su Xian lied to him that she was pregnant, but when she went to the hospital for a checkup, she was exposed. As a result, the couple ended up in a bad relationship. As for why Su Xian mentioned Tangning and how she had previously threatened Tangning on set, the police did their own investigation. But, the director simply replied, Su Xian previously asked Tangning to teach her acting. But, because she is the female lead, Tangning has a lot of work to do, so she couldn't teach her. Su Xian must be holding a grudge, but Tangning hasn't reacted to it. She's quite magnanimous. Plus, the two of them don't compete with each other. So, only Su Exan knows why she hates Tangning so much. After a series of investigations, the police determined that neither the director nor Tangning had any motive to kill, nor was there any premeditation. So, they concluded that Su Exan's case was a suicide and closed it. However, the actions of the police had infuriated the audience outside. The truth was obvious. Before Su Exan died, she had left behind a suicide note and claimed that Tangning wasn't a good person. If this didn't prove that there was a grudge between the two, then what could? Didn't the police close the case too hastily? No one suspects that Su Exan committed suicide. But, why did she commit suicide? Shouldn't the police investigate the matter? If they closed the case so quickly, doesn't Tangning have anything to do with it? Either way, I can't use my life to hate someone. Can you do that? Please investigate the truth and bring justice to the deceased. The police wanted to cry, but no tears came out. The incident wasn't as complicated as the public imagined it to be. After all, Tangning didn't do anything to hurt Su Exan. If they had to find a reason, it would be that Su Exan's mentality was too weak. But, due to pressure from the public, the police decided to interrogate the people closest to Su Exan, especially her boyfriend, the director. Tell us how you and Su Exan met, the director said. The director knew that he had to tell the truth at a time like this. Otherwise, if the police found out, the consequences would be unimaginable. So, he explained how Su Exan entered his room and revealed their feelings in bed. In that case, did you announce your relationship with her because you wanted to be serious with her? I'm sorry, officer. I need to explain everything clearly. Su Exan has used our relationship to threaten me in the past, so I suppressed her script and recommended her to a new production. Afterwards, Su Exan told me that she was pregnant. At first, I didn't believe her, but since it was mine, I had to take responsibility. So, I announced that we were together. At that time, Tangning bumped into Su Exan leaving my room, but she did not make a fuss about it. She simply reminded me to keep a clear line between work and personal matters. What's wrong with doing that? The police remained silent for a few seconds before they nodded their heads. That's right. If you want to give the public an explanation, you can look into Su Exan's past and understand her life and character. We did have feelings for each other in the past, but I can't wrongly accuse Tangning. That's all I want to say. The police received information from the director that Tangning had bumped into Su Exan and the director, so they contacted Tangning. Tangning arrived at the police station very cooperatively and appeared very calm. We heard from the director that you bumped into Su Exan leaving his room. Can you tell us about this? That night, my husband came to visit me on set without alerting anyone. So, as I was sending him off in the morning, I bumped into Su Exan leaving the director's room. She then took a photo of my husband's back and assumed that I was having an affair, so she used it to threaten me. The first thing she did was ask me to call the editor of Global Style and ask her to appear on the front cover of their May issue. You can verify this with the agency. But I told the editor-in-chief of the fashion magazine to never hire her. Afterwards, I invited my husband over to clarify the matter. Afterwards, we even had a small conflict. Tangning told the police about Su Exan's behavior during filming. You didn't do anything drastic? The police asked. Chapter 8:12. What would be considered extreme? Tangning asked. The police officer looked deeply into Tangning's eyes. He felt that this legendary woman's eyes were especially open and easy to trust. Also, officer, although Su Exan's agency tried to hide the truth, Hai Rui's powerful information network still managed to find out that Su Exan had a history of mental illness. You can take a look at this. The police officer nodded his head. Thanks to Tangning, he had gained another breakthrough. A person that went to extremes because of anger was so extreme that it wasn't normal. Okay, thank you for pointing us in the right direction. The young police officer suddenly changed the topic. You need to be careful too. As a public figure, you need to shoulder your responsibilities. Focus on your work and don't cause so much drama. Thank you for your reminder, officer, Tangning replied with a smile. Okay, the police will investigate the truth as soon as possible and give you justice. But, for a person to scream that she hates you right before her death is indeed suspicious in the eyes of others. We simply hope that the matter won't escalate further. I hope you can cooperate with us, the police officer sighed after recording Tangning's statement. Only time will tell. I'll escort you out. It's safer for you to take the police car than to leave like this. After all, there was a large group of reporters waiting for Tangning to walk into their trap. No need. My husband is waiting outside. After speaking, Tangning nodded at the police officer and quickly turned around to leave through the back door of the police station. Although Mo Ting was careful, he still accidentally leaked information. As a result, the media immediately chased after Tangning to a nearby parking lot and surrounded her. Tangning, don't go yet. Accept our interview. Everyone is saying that you forced Su Xin to commit suicide. Is this true? The relationship between you and Su Xin isn't as simple as the police have announced, is it? The reason why Su Xin won't let you off is because you used extreme methods to suppress her, right? Tangning furrowed her brows. She had no intention of looking directly at the cameras. But, she was completely surrounded. Squeezing back and forth, it was difficult for her to escape. Tangning, don't push. Don't push. From the looks of it, the reporters weren't going to let her go until they tore her to shreds. Tangning, I'm sure you didn't expect to force Su Xin to her death, right? Tangning wanted to move forward, but to her surprise, the reporters held her back from behind, not giving her any chance to move. At this moment, a loud shout suddenly sounded in everyone's ears, "Move aside." Everyone noticed the voice had come from Mo Ting, who had just stepped out of his black car. He quickly approached the crowd and, under the stunned gazes of the reporters, broke through the crowd and wrapped his arms around Tangning. Accept your interview? Sure, ask me if you have any questions. Everyone was a little surprised. Although they were afraid of Mo Ting, they still felt it would be a shame to lose this opportunity. So, they gathered their courage and asked, President Mo, did Tangning force Su Xin to her death? She slit her wrist and stabbed herself in the chest. Suicide. Mo Ting replied coldly as he looked at the reporter. No, what I mean is, did she commit suicide because Tangning forced her to do so? The police have given us a clear answer. What kind of story do you want to hear? The reporter was obviously frightened by Mo Ting's aura. He opened his mouth, but did not dare to ask any more questions. Is there anything else you want to ask? If not, then move aside. But, Hai Rui may have colluded with the police. Hearing the timid words of one of the reporters, Mo Ting suddenly stopped in his tracks. Did you think Hai Rui had the ability to do that? Do you have any brains? Mo Ting asked coldly. You are all adults. I won't deny that you have to do such despicable things for the sake of a living. But, the fact that you've ignored the law has made me understand why you can only be an entertainment reporter. That's what you'll be for the rest of your life. If killing a person is that easy, then you should really take care of your own safety. Everyone looked at each other, not daring to say another word. Sometimes, even they didn't understand why so many people worked tirelessly to find the truth. The police had already provided them with the truth, yet no one believed them. No one believed them. Let's go. This time, no one dared to stand in Mo Ting's way. All they could do was watch as Mo Ting led Tangning away. Perhaps, because it was a murder case, everyone in the industry kept Su Xin's suicide a secret. Those that had worked with her in the past and interacted with her in the past all assumed that Tangning had fallen into a pit and would never be able to climb back up again. After all, an unexplainable incident like this would become a black mark on her that could never be erased. As for Hai Rui's artists, they didn't mind talking about it because they believed in Tangning's character. But, their managers didn't think it was necessary to let a moment of loyalty affect their careers, so they deliberately avoided talking about Tangning. In fact, as soon as Tangning entered the agency, the way everyone looked at her changed. The only thing that didn't change was Lin Qian's appearance in Mo Ting's office. Right now, everyone is kicking me when I'm down. I don't need an assistant for the time being. You can. What's wrong with that? It's not like I have to be someone's assistant. It's just that that person happens to be you, Lin Qian replied. Tangning smiled and asked Lin Qian, previously, I asked you to do something for me. How's it going? I've already made a list of names and placed it on President Mo's desk, Lin Qian said as she pointed to Mo Ting's desk. What do you want? I think it's a bit overkill for you to be my assistant. Why don't you do something else? Lin Qian looked confused. You'll know soon enough. Why aren't you in a hurry to clarify yourself? Lin Qian was curious about Tangning's mentality. If it was someone else, they would have already sat at home crying. Yet, Tangning acted like nothing had happened. Right now, no matter what I say or do, it's just an excuse, Tangning shrugged helplessly. Although Su Xian is no longer around, I still find her disgusting, Lin Qian said honestly. By the way, the director couldn't get in touch with you, so he gave me a phone call to tell me that Survivor isn't going to be released anymore. It seems, the CEO feels that you have a bad record and can't be a role model for other artists. But, they don't want to continue investing in you, so they decided to scrap the film. But, the director insisted on finishing filming. As for any future expenses, he will cover it. He asked you to take some time to return to the set. Chapter 8:13. He's even bought the rights to the film because he believes it will one day become a classic. He's too kind, Tangning sighed. Tangning sighed before replying to Lin Qian, reply to him. After the press conference, I will definitely return. Okay. Just as Lin Qian was about to leave Mo Ting's office, Lu Che knocked on the door and walked in. President, Quan Zai has come looking for Hai Rui. He wants to sign a contract with them. After hearing this, Tangning glanced at Lin Qian. I'm afraid he's here with an ulterior motive. That has nothing to do with me, Lin Qian replied. Ting, what do you think? Tangning asked Mo Ting. Sign it. The news of Quan Zai signing with Hai Rui helped Tangning take some of the pressure off her shoulders. This time, a lot of people were throwing stones at Tangning while she was down. Many of them were hoping that she would fall into the abyss and never get back up again. But, Tangning did not give them what they wanted. Ting, focus on your work. I can finally find some time to take care of the babies. Tangning felt like a huge burden had been lifted off her shoulders. Even though her advertisements were being removed from the streets and alleys, she wasn't in as much pain as the public imagined. As for Mo Ting, he understood his wife's thoughts and knew that she had other plans. So, he wasn't worried and allowed her to do whatever she wanted as long as she was happy. Everyone knew that Su Xian's incident couldn't be cleared up. Not to mention, Hai Rui's PR and the police had already provided an accurate explanation. But, there was no way to wake up those that were pretending to be asleep. So, Tangning decided to take the opportunity to retreat. Firstly, she could take care of the babies and Mo Ting. Secondly, she wanted to do her part to cleanse the dirty industry. In this world, there were too many people that tried their best, but ended up being restricted by those that were better off. So, all she wanted to do was seek justice for these people. Tangning has disappeared. She's probably afraid. Now that her film has been stopped and her advertisement has been changed, Hai-Rui has no choice but to give up on her. Who cares about her? She forced someone to die. Isn't this the price she deserves? I hope we don't see any more news about her from now on. I'm afraid it won't be easy for you to see any news about her from now on. It didn't take long before news of Quan Zai signing with Hai-Rui leaked out. The media speculated that Hai-Rui was the one that released the news. But, in reality, Quan Zai was the one that kept his mouth shut. He spent a lot of money to get his contract back from overseas and did everything he could to sign a contract with Hai-Rui, all because he wanted to get closer to Lin Qian. Even though, when they first met at Hai-Rui, Lin Qian had never looked at him in the eye. However, Quan Zai grabbed onto her arm. You are now Tang Ning's assistant. Don't you want me to put in a good word for her? Ning Jie doesn't need that, Lin Qian replied calmly as she freed herself from Quan Zai's grip. Aren't you afraid that I'll say bad things about her? That is your personal choice. After speaking, Lin Qian left Hai-Rui and drove back to her apartment. She finally understood what Tang Ning wanted to do at this moment. Tang Ning wanted to set up a company and only sign talented artists that had been neglected and used unspoken rules. She put Lin Qian in charge of the company's operations. This was the position that Tang Ning felt Lin Qian should be in. Lin Qian also felt that this was a challenging job. On one hand, Tang Ning had given her such a heavy responsibility. On the other hand, she wanted justice for those that had been oppressed by money and power. So, she gladly accepted the job. This meant, even if Quan Zai signed with Hai-Rui, they wouldn't have the chance to meet again. After all, Mo Ting's office was directly connected to Hai-Rui's underground parking lot. Lin Qian was in charge of the company's operations and administration, while Long Jia was in charge of her connections. So, of course, Tang Ning was in charge of securing resources for her artists. Her job was no different from that of a manager. As for Hai-Rui, it was easier for Mo Ting to explain. If Tang Ning was able to make an artist famous, then Hai-Rui would definitely be their home. In reality, it was a win-win situation. So, the shareholders did not object to the idea at all. They simply had their doubts. Tang Ning was currently in a difficult situation. How was she going to make another artist famous? And Zihao gave Tang Ning a phone call. After hearing about her thoughts, he wanted to help out, but Tang Ning directly rejected him. It wasn't easy for you to get to this point with Xingyan. There's no need to be tied to me and suffer another blow. I am currently a murderer in everyone's eyes. I'm a heinous criminal. Yet, you still dare to help others find resources? Tang Ning laughed and replied confidently, I walk my own path. When have I ever been afraid? But, it made sense. She had gone from a model to an actress and then from an actress to a manager. What was wrong with that? If you become a manager, what about President Mo? He will be my manager for life. I can't escape from him. Zihao, you need to believe that I will definitely return to my current position. No one can stop me, not even a dead person. She was only temporarily trapped. I trust you. As long as you aren't affected by it, that's all that matters. After being in the industry for so many years, she had already experienced ups and downs. All that was left was a test of patience. After returning home and seeing the two babies lying in their cribs, Tang Ning finally felt at ease. Especially when she saw Guo Guo sleeping soundly, the uneasiness in her heart quickly dissipated. You two rascals, mommy didn't force anyone to their death. I hope from now on, the two of you can learn not to care about what the industry says and trust your mommy. You're still talking. Xia Yuling walked out of the kitchen with a bottle of milk and patted Tang Ning on the shoulder. After causing such a huge commotion, your entire family has been implicated. Everywhere you go, there are reporters. Mom. It was rare for Tang Ning to call someone in such a coquettish tone, so Xia Yuling's heart couldn't help but soften. Are you tired? If worse comes to worst, you can quit being an actress. You are the CEO of Tang Corp. Are you afraid of starving to death? No, I just wanted to call out to you, Tang Ning replied gently. After becoming a mother, I'll understand you better. It's good that you know. Hurry up and deal with the mess. Just looking at it makes your grandfather angry and makes him want to fight with outsiders. I understand, Tang Ning nodded. No matter what, she still had such a big family that trusted her. So, there was no way she was going to admit defeat or be afraid. I will take care of the press conference. I trust in you. Xia Yuling patted Tang Ning on the head and placed the bottle in her hands. Go take care of your two sons. I still need to go home and take care of my granddaughters. I can't let Li Hua tire herself out. Thanks for your hard work, Mom. Tang Ning held onto the bottle and was determined to take good care of the two babies. She wasn't going to be so stupid as to abandon the two most important people in her life. From now on, she was going to put Mo Ting and her sons first. Chapter 8:14. There was only one more day before the press conference. Tang Ning was leisurely taking care of the two babies at home. This was the first time Long Jia had visited Hyatt Regency after her confinement period. Seeing the two babies crawling around Tang Ning, she couldn't help but smile. From the looks of it, you're enjoying your current life. The outside world has been flipped upside down because of you. It's not like I'm going to pay for it with my life. Tang Ning placed Tang Tang in her arms and let Guo Guo nibble on Tang Tang's feet. Let's get back to business. I already have information on the people you want. But, we can't sign so many people at once. Plus, with your current situation, they won't trust you. So, let's do it one at a time, Long Jia said as she pulled out some information. Ever since giving birth to a daughter, she had completely changed. Tang Ning did not say a word. She simply looked at Long Jie. What happened? I just feel like you've suddenly returned to the days when we were at Tianyi. At that time, Long Jie was very ambitious in her work. She was always trying to help Mo Euro obtain resources. But, Tang Ning always gave them to Mo Euro, making Long Jie sad. Can't you just leave me alone and stop thinking about that jerk Han Yufan? Long Jia rolled her eyes. I'm talking about serious business. I don't want any of the people on your list. I already have someone else in mind, Tang Ning replied. Let's discuss everything after the press conference. The reporters either want to see you cry and apologize, or they want to see you make a joke out of yourself. None of them have good intentions, Long Jia scoffed. But, who do you think you are? You are Tang Ning. Tang Ning has to walk a different path. So, they won't be able to see what they want to see, Tang Ning shrugged. As for those who hit you when you're down, as for those who hit me when I'm down, they'll know how to write the word regret. I'm suddenly looking forward to the press conference. Tang Ning raised her eyebrows. The last time Lin Qian went to Hai Rui to hand in some documents, she bumped into Quan Zai in the hallway. As usual, he was charming as ever. No matter where he went, he would attract attention. Hi, Assistant Lin, we meet again. Hello, Mr. Quan. I think this is the last time we meet, Lin Qian replied coldly. What do you mean? Exactly what I said. After speaking, Lin Qian turned to leave, but Quan Zai held on to her arm. I joined Hai Rui because of you. I didn't beg you. Lin Qian said rather cruelly, brother, I've made it very clear. You have your life, and I have my own path. We can't always be together. You'll get married in the end, and I'll find my own home. Don't you think it's against your conscience to say this? Quan Zai questioned. Which part of your body haven't I seen and touched? Other men have already seen me when I wear a bikini. Plus, when I go for a massage, the masseur has already touched me. So, you're not special. After speaking, Lin Qian freed herself from Quan Zai's grip. Go do what you need to do. You're rejecting me like this because you're worried about my mother, right? Don't mention your mother to me, Lin Qian said as she walked away from Quan Zai's shoulder without looking back. Meanwhile, Quan Zai smiled bitterly, so, it's because of my mother. Zai, I think Qian's not simply because she's afraid that your mother will find out. Think about it, how many times have you told Qian that you'll deal with your mother, but she's never moved? In fact, every time you mention your mother, she feels disgusted. What are you trying to say? Quan Zai turned and looked at his manager. Something must have happened between Auntie and Qian. It's best that you figure it out first. Qian used to be the closest to you. What brought the two of you to this point? Is it because of Qian's change? Quan Zai fell into deep thought before he returned to his flirtatious self. Don't arrange anything for tomorrow night. I'm going home for dinner. Okay, while you're at it, find out what Qian meant by her words. She was referring to the part where she said never to see her again. Hai Rui's press conference was held in the Golden Hall of a 5-star hotel. The time given by Lu Che was 10:30 a.m. Just like Long Jie said, the public were waiting to see how Tangning would explain herself. Or, they were guessing that Tangning would cry her heart out during the press conference. After all, the blow she had received this time was the biggest one she had ever received. Tangning, who had never bowed down to things like this, was she going to kneel down this time? The public was already in a state of discussion. Since Hai Rui has the guts to hold a press conference, it means Mo Ting still has a way to turn the situation around. It's not like you guys haven't experienced how good Tangning is at PR. If Tangning can still explain herself this time, I think she'll be able to ascend to the heavens. That's right, it's an undeniable fact that she's being pressured to death. Don't you guys know that whenever Tangning is mentioned, they're calling her a murderer? Her business partners are so scared that they've immediately withdrawn their advertisements. Let's wait and see what Tangning has to say. Of course, Tangning still had her loyal fans. I still believe in my Ning. I'm sure she'll give us an explanation. She was once my pillar of support and that will never change. My Ning must be feeling terrible after being wrongly accused. All in all, before Tangning even appeared at the press conference, the public was already in an uproar. How many people were waiting to see Tangning's fate and how many were already prepared to kick her when she was down? Are you ready? Mo Ting asked as he looked down at the woman in his arms. I won't be getting involved in today's press conference. You can say whatever you want and do whatever you want. But, at the same time, Ning, you need to think about the consequences. Okay, I've thought it through, Tangning nodded as she lay in Mo Ting's arms. Let me face it on my own. This time, I don't need any PR because I need a fresh start. Mo Ting patted Tangning on the head. Who would be willing to let their loved one be scolded? How could they bear to do that? But, Tangning wasn't an ordinary person and what she wanted to do wasn't ordinary either. We're here. Tangning nodded. So, Mr. Mo, can you come with me to the press conference to be scolded? Mo Ting did not respond. He simply opened the door and got out of the car first. He then walked around the back of the car and approached Tangning's door. After opening it, he stretched out his hand. At this time, the reporters surrounded them. However, because of Mo Ting's presence, they did not dare to get too close to Tangning. After all, the answer was going to be revealed at the press conference, wasn't it? Right now, even if they were to interrogate Tangning, she wouldn't answer. Let's go, it's about to start. Chapter 8:15. This was already the first time Tangning had held a press conference since her debut. But, It was just like any other press conference she had ever held. There were a lot of reporters. The entire venue was filled with the sound of shutters and countless cameras. These people wanted the most explosive news, even if it wasn't true. Not only that, these people looked at Tang Ning with an interrogative gaze, like a machine that had been programmed to be mean. Although Su Xian's death didn't have much to do with Tang Ning, she still respected the deceased by wearing a long black dress and not wearing too much makeup. Under the protection of security, she walked onto the stage in a pair of black high heels. This time, Mo Ting sat below the stage as a spectator. But, as soon as the reporters saw Mo Ting, they naturally felt a complicated sense of fear. Tang Ning turned around and looked at the crowd below the stage. As she looked at the eyes that were waiting for the truth, she gently greeted the reporters. "Good morning. Tang Ning, everyone is waiting to hear your thoughts on Su Xian's death," one of the reporters said anxiously. "Can you tell us which of the rumors are true? Can you tell us the reason behind Su Xian's death?" "That's right. Tang Ning, Su Xian's death has been a mystery to everyone. Can you tell us what exactly happened?" Confused? After hearing the reporter's words, Tang Ning couldn't help but repeat the words, "What do you mean confused? The police have already closed the case. It's just that you don't believe it." The reporters looked at Tang Ning as if to say, "Don't come here." They didn't believe that there was a story behind this. But, because they were afraid of Mo Ting, they did not say any nasty words at this point in time. "Su Xian's incident has greatly affected your career. Regardless of the reason, you should tell everyone the truth." The reporters tried to use her career to suppress Tang Ning. Tang Ning's lips curved upwards as she looked at the reporters below the stage. After a while, she finally said, "Okay, since you want the truth, then I'll give you the truth." Hearing this, the reporters' eyes immediately lit up. Whether Tang Ning was telling the truth or making up a story, for them, it meant headlines, popularity, a mission and a reward. "Su Xian and I are simply partners that have worked together before. We are not friends or competitors. Are you trying to prove that you have nothing to do with Su Xian?" The reporter asked. "Are you brave enough to say that you've never suppressed her?" Looking at the sharp question, Tang Ning laughed and replied, "Yes, I did suppress her." Tang Ning had always been flawless, but today, she actually admitted to bullying Su Xian in front of everyone. She had once suppressed Su Xian. Suppressed? Since you tried to suppress her, why didn't you admit that Su Xian's death had something to do with you? Then do you want to know why I suppressed her? That night, Ting visited the set. But, because he was in a rush to return to Hai Rui the next morning, he did not disturb the crew. As I was sending him off, Su Xian managed to capture a photo of Ting's back. She didn't recognize that it was my husband, so she thought she had caught me cheating on her. As a result, Su Xian made a request to me. She asked me to help her obtain resources and asked my manager, Lin Qian, to contact the editor of Global Style so that Su Xian could appear on the front cover of the May issue. But, I directly told the agency not to use Su Xian. Afterwards, my husband visited the set and clarified everything. This is how I suppressed Su Xian. She threatened me, but I refused to be threatened. I clarified the truth and did not expose Su Xian's methods. What else did you want me to do? From then on, I no longer had anything to do with her. So, why should I be responsible for her death? Then, why did she continue to scold you until her death? The reporter asked. You should be asking Su Xian this question, Tang Ning replied. Tang Ning, you should know what kind of situation we are in today. You called for a press conference to clarify the truth and restore your fallen career. I'm sorry, my career is indeed important, but I can't possibly go against my will and apologize to you. Why should I bow down to you? Tang Ning asked. Even the police didn't make things difficult for me. Who do you think you are? You are an artist. We have the responsibility to supervise you. Then, as a citizen, have you learned to trust the law and respect justice? As a journalist, have you learned to seek the truth and respect reality? I can't create the story that you want, nor do I know how to. You want to supervise me? You're simply here to question me. We are simply trying to find the truth. Su Xian's death has nothing to do with me. This is the truth, Tang Ning said honestly. Although I know that you won't believe me even if I talk until my mouth is dry, that's the truth. If you don't believe me, there's nothing I can do. As for my career, if I can't even maintain my dignity, what career do I need? Tang Ning took a deep breath and calmed herself down. I will remember every reporter here today. Let's wait 3 years and see if you can last longer on this stage, or if I can last longer. You're about to become nothing, yet you're still trying to talk nonsense with us. I'll say it one last time, I have nothing to do with Su Xian's death. Whether you believe me or not, it's up to you. After speaking, Tang Ning walked off the stage, leaving the reporters disappointed. What happened to Tang Ning's usual PR methods? Why was it that now, there was no place for it to be used? Reality proved that, no matter how powerful an artist's background was, they could still become a fallen star in the entertainment industry. As for Tang Ning's press conference, it meant that she was about to lose the advantage and home advantage that she had over the past 2 years. The reporters originally wanted to make things difficult for Tang Ning, but they realized that Tang Ning's words made them look especially ugly and scary. A newly crowned Best Actress was forced into such a state by the reporters. It was clear to see how ruthless the Beijing reporters were. After Huarong Studios' Lin Chong was subdued by Tang Ning, he was also among the reporters. However, he had long since stopped pressuring Tang Ning. He simply smiled at the surrounding reporters. She really didn't force Su Xian to die. Pfft, do you really believe everything she says? Of course I believe her. She has a bottom line, unlike the rest of you, including me, Lin Chong said before he grabbed his camera and returned to his studio. His studio was recommended by Tang Ning, so he did his job well. These people, don't they know that Tang Ning not only has a bottom line, but she also holds a grudge? All the reporters here today are probably going to suffer. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.